Okay. I believe I am live. Let me check. Okay. Yes, I am. All right. So, totally different topic. We're switching to. I'm gonna grab a soda. Here, I'll play this and let some people filter in. Okay, welcome back.
Looks like it.
Thanks for switching over. And yeah, so totally different subject matter now, a little bit more lighthearted. So this was requested, but it was something that I did want to I was considering going over on a live stream because I just love this interview particularly. Debate. I is my favorite Pearl debate. And I think basically all of her rhetoric, all of her points are displayed here pretty nicely and concisely, just all in one video. And I think Trent does a really good job in pointing out the fallacies in her logic and her arguments, the faults in her argument. So yeah, I enjoy this, and so yeah, that's what we're gonna do for the rest of the night. This is the Trent Horn versus Pearl Davis in studio debate.
Like that. Yeah. That'd be great.
Okay. All right.
Take your time. You're terrific.
I'm going to go. All right. So, marriage today is a bad deal for men, meaning that it is more likely.
I'm assuming you guys already know who these people are, so I kind of skipped their introduction because it's a little bit of a longer video. It's like 2 hours long. But yeah, it's Pearl Davis, obviously just pearly things, and then Trent Horn. He is a Catholic apologist, I think. That's what he said in his intro. So he's Catholic, pro-marriage. Yeah.
To not work out than it is to work out. 51% of those that sign up for marriage are not in a better place. Out of 100 men, at least 50 are not getting a good deal, essentially. I would like to clarify that I am not talking about some religious sect. I am talking about average American.
Wait, let me
on YouTube.
let me get
Millions of dating
Let me
and
just see.
relationships. London and
I am an apologist for Catholic Answers, and I am the host of the Council of Trent podcast on YouTube.
okay, so that's who they
Each
are.
other. That'd be great.
essentially. I would like to clarify that I am not talking about some religious sect. I am talking about average Americans. On top of that, there is a huge legal risk you are facing as a man. Again, I am not here to discuss the religiosity of marriage, but I'm here to talk about the outcomes of marriage in 2024, as well as the legal ramifications for getting married. I've interviewed over 1,000 women and men on marriage and relationships, and have been putting together a documentary on family court, and have found that most men have no idea what they are signing up for when they get married. Marriage is objectively a bad deal for men in 2024. What I would consider a bad deal is where the risk outweighs the reward. What I would consider a successful marriage is an obedient wife and staying together for a lifetime. To put it simply, men want sex, silence, and sandwiches from a woman they are attracted to. Unfortunately, women are not offering that in 2024. Women have zero interest in being wives. Gen Z women rank men 7th on their priority list, coming behind things like education, travel, and experiences. Millennial women are not much better. They rank men as 4th behind their careers, education, and finances. I personally have interviewed over 1,000 women from London to Miami to Vegas and even the suburbs of Chicago. And I can tell you firsthand that most young women have no interest in being wives. This can be shown by women's outcomes and choices. Many men like Trent have been married for years and have no idea what the dating market is like for young people. 1 out of 3 women have had an abortion in the United States. 1 out of 4 women has an STD. 90% of women have been on birth control at some point in their life. 80% of sexually active women will contract HPV at some point in their lifetime. The average woman is 5'3" and 170 pounds. On top of that, men can never really know the sexual past of the woman they are marrying. Dating apps have made promiscuity more accessible and easier to hide. Women have a great incentive to lie about their sexual past. The CDC reports that the average number of sexual partners for a woman is between 4 and 8. But I can tell you from interviews that I have done that below 10 is considered low nowadays. This is especially crazy considering once a woman has over 5 sexual partners, she is less likely to have a stable marriage. After women have had over 10 sexual partners, the chance of a happy marriage drops to merely 14%. Only 3% of women report waiting for marriage for a religious reason. A quarter of women have a mental illness. Over half of women between the ages of 18 to 29 have at least one tattoo. The average woman has at least $26,000 worth of debt. And on top of that, young women are officially out cheating and out drinking men. That makes marrying a woman today a higher risk than times of the past. But let's look at marriage. What benefits are given to men in marriage? 100 years ago, men would have gotten a debt-free virgin who gave him 4+ children and was expected to obey him. Unfortunately, now modern marriage is simply whore management. The majority of women are not known to be obedient wives. How do we know this? From one, we have phrases like, it's cheaper to keep her and happy wife, happy life. If women were so obedient...
This is real quick. Aren't those phrases like old phrases? Like, I feel like when I hear like happy wife, happy life, that's like fucking like 50s TV shit. Like I Love Lucy shit. I don't know, just something. Like I just I don't I feel like these people, the red pillars and manosphere people don't stress enough on how like lots of relationships, you know, back in the day when they talk about all these like no fault divorce times and stuff like that, like these relationships, a lot of them weren't happy. Like, yeah, lots of them were, some were, but like I don't think relationships today are any less happy than they were at any previous time throughout history. And if anything, I think they're probably healthier and happier today than before. That would just be my guess, just with, you know, our advances in mental health and you know, being able to marry for reasons other than superficial and provision and optics and stuff like that. Also with the, you know, like just like picking a partner for reasons other than finances and, like I said, like family optics and stuff like that. I just think it's really unfair to pose marriage pre like the 1970s as like these all perfect, just completely successful and happy marriages, just because there's less divorce, because there wasn't no fault divorce, and also getting divorced was basically like a death sentence in the community. Being a divorcee, you were basically like exiled from the community. Nobody wanted to be that person, especially in churches and stuff, which there were much higher church goer ratings back then. So I just think it's really not accurate to paint this picture that like only today our marriage is totally messed up and stuff.
And good wives. Why are all of the phrases focused on bending to the will of the woman? On top of that, we can look at women's choices during marriage. Some common problems that I have found is that women gain a significant amount of weight in marriage. On average, women gain 24 pounds within the first 5 years of marriage. It would be one thing if women were giving men 4+ children like they were 100 years ago, but on average, women give men 1 to 2 children. The other issue we have is sexless marriages. When we look at the boomer generation, a third of them are in sexless marriages. How many men have reported that women stop sleeping with them after they have children? How many men would sign up for marriage?
And that, I would like to argue, by the way, which she says boomer generation. I think the sexless marriage thing is an older generation issue. And that's because I think a lot of women didn't enjoy sex because they didn't even know how to, you know, pleasure, how their own pleasure works. Like, I believe a lot of women, you know, prior to recent ages, probably haven't, like the majority of women prior to recent days, haven't even had an orgasm, like ever. Like a real orgasm, ever. Which is like of course you're not going to enjoy sex if it doesn't feel good. So you're not going to want to have sex. So that's why I do think part of like women's sexual liberation is a healthy thing for couples. Like, and again, I'm not like promoting people, men or women, going and just sleeping around with anyone, anywho, just for the fuck of it. Especially if it's literally just for the, not literally just for the fuck of it, like just for fucking, but just because it's like the cool thing to do, or you're using it as power or something. I think that's very unhealthy, and I've seen a lot of hurt women sleep around carelessly a lot because they were hurt, right? I've seen that. I don't think that's healthy, but I do think it's healthy for women to get in touch with their sexuality and their body and experience, like, just chemistry with men. I'm trying to do this in the most like whatever way possible, but like, yeah, I don't know. I think that's a good thing that women are getting more in touch with sex and being more open about it. They don't have to be flaunting their bodies on OnlyFans and on Instagram and stuff. That's totally different. But being able just to like talk about it and not be the super taboo thing for women, I do think that's a good thing, and I think that's healthy for couples.
If they knew that they no longer would have sex, their wives would know.
Like versus shaming women. That's what I'm saying. Like versus like before, where we would like shame women for having a healthy sexual life.
No longer have sex with them. Now, while this is not the majority of those marriages, that is still not insignificant. Men are not even guaranteed an in-shape wife who sleeps with them. Now let's talk about the legal ramifications of marriage and family for men. I do not say this with a happy heart, but there is simply no legal way to stop a woman who wants to divorce you from doing so. My logic is quite simple. When you pay people to do the wrong thing, more people will do it, even seemingly good people. Unfortunately, men, the divorce system heavily benefits women, and the stats reflect that. Women file for divorce 70% of the time, and 73% of the time, the reason given is irreconcilable differences. This does not make sense considering people date on average 3 years before marriage. What differences did you not notice in those?
Do I think there is an appropriate number of sexual partners prior to marriage? Yeah, I think it is arbitrary. I do think certain numbers can be red flags for both sides. And again, it also depends on the person. Like, obviously, for somebody who's religious, it's going to be different than somebody who isn't religious and who also is more of a sexual free person or whatever. Like, but some people care, some people don't care as much. I think there can be like I think it obviously can get unhealthy, but I don't think that's the majority of people that are getting to like unhealthy numbers. And especially with Tinder nowadays and everything, I just don't think it's going to be. I just think meeting somebody who's like a next to none like virgin is just unrealistic. But and again, it just matters like what community you're in. Like if you're in a Christian community, or if you meet somebody in more of a like a club party scenario community, or I don't know, it really just depends on the person. But I also think that people I don't know. I also don't think that like maybe today with Tinder and stuff, it might be a little worse than how it used to be. But I don't think people back in the 70s and the 60s and even the 50s and even in the 1800s and stuff, I don't think they were as pure as people paint them to be during Prohibition, during Roman times. Like, I just don't think there were all these just like pure virgins who, you know, weren't fucking and cheating and all this. Like, I just think these are very false ideas that society has, like governments and stuff, have tried to drill into our heads that aren't actual reality. But I do think probably because of access with Tinder and just a larger population in general, people having cars to be able to, like, you know, travel more easily, like there's going to be more casual sex just naturally.
Was 3 years. This makes sense considering the rising body counts and how promiscuous women are going into marriage. This is not only devastating to men, but also deadly. Men are 9 times more likely to commit suicide following a divorce. Child support is tied to social.
But like, to answer your question, I wouldn't put like a number on it. No. It really depends on the person and their lifestyle. Like the chooser.
Security in Title 4D, and if you cannot pay, the government can take away your money directly from your bank account, ruin your credit score, take away even your fishing license, take money directly from your paycheck, and even throw you in jail. The best interest of the child is a principle to ensure government policies safeguard the rights and holistic needs of children. It is standard used in family law to make decisions impacting a child. And
so my honest opinion on this is, I think right now there's this whole, I think it's just a reaction to, I think right now the whole women using sex for money and power is a reaction to the past and how we used to highly shame women for their sexuality. And now, women, this is like a rash reaction to that, and like, I don't think it's a good thing, but I'm calling it what it is. It's a reaction, and women are trying to take the power back and being like, okay, well, if you want to basically just see me as a sexual object, like my purpose is sex or my value is sex, but you know, you want me to be this like virgin pure person, like fuck you, I'm going to use my power, and I'm going to have that power over men now. And I don't think that's healthy, but that's what's happening like in culture, and I do think we're dying out of that. I think that was a short-lived, like maybe 10-20 year at most phase, and I think we're like starting to come out of that already, which is like pretty quick in my opinion, but it's gonna go on for a little bit more, but I already see us regressing out of that a little bit. And yeah, but I don't think the answer is shaming women again, because I think that's what got us here in the first place. And I think if we just like normalize like the fact that women, you know, are sexual beings too, and again, like not as sexual as men are, but like start recognizing women's sexuality and normalizing that and not making it taboo and not shaming women for it, I just think it will normalize out and there won't be these extremities.
Matters of adoption, child custody, guardianship, and visitation.
There's like a healthy amount of sexuality, but completely shaming women for having a sex drive or even experimenting and having some casual sex in their life, I think that's completely normal. I don't think that's a bad thing, and in fact I think it's a good thing. I think it's healthy for women to get in touch with their sexuality and also not be scarred by sex and traumatized by sex, and then be able to enjoy it with somebody they do love.
This principle means that any situation should be looked at from the child's point of view. This sounds nice in theory, but this law is weaponized against men all across this country. This means the best interest of the child, even in cases where you are lied to about paternity. For example, in California, if you were on the child's birth certificate after the age of 2 and you were lied to about paternity, you are on the hook for child support for 16 years. There are many ways that women weaponize the family court in order to drain resources from men, but I'm going to list a couple I have seen. I have seen temporary restraining orders set to separate fathers from children. Men can be kicked out of the house they pay for on a moment's notice with a restraining order. In that time period between her filing it and going to court, the mother can put the father on child support because technically she is spending more time with the children. What is not considered is that the woman spent more time with the kids because she had not been letting the dad see them due to the restraining order. This is not illegal for women to do, and there is no punishment. I interviewed one man in London who had spent over $100,000 fighting for his children and still had not seen them in 2 years. I interviewed another man whose wife...
And to be fair, I also know women this has happened to, by the way, but...
tried to transition his kid without his permission. I interviewed another man who... I interviewed another man whose wife was trying to transition his kid without his permission. It took him 3 years and over $50,000 to get custody. Imagine if he did not have the money. Many men go into bankruptcy trying to fight for their children. A case I covered in the state of Chicago, a father had paid over $1 million to his ex-wife during a divorce and was still thrown in jail because he could not keep up with his $10,000 a month payment. The child support payment is calculated by current earnings, so if a man loses his job, which many do due to the stress of divorce, he is still on the hook for child support even if he cannot afford the money.
To your point, Jerry, like, yes, but when you talk about media and culture, like, a bunch of people are up in a roar right now because women are being very open and vile and crude about sexuality in hip-hop and rap. And how long has this been happening? How long have men been doing this? Right, being very crude and sexually vile, in culture for a very long time. And that's why I just think it's kind of like a reaction. And I don't think it's, I don't agree with it. I don't think it's cool. But I think it's a, to be funny, or to be honest, I do think it's kind of funny, not gonna lie. Like, it does feel kind of good, like, a little bit, like, hearing some of the shit, like, when you're just growing up as, like, a young girl and just hearing all these very explicit things about women, and then you have this, like, female artist who's now saying, like, crazy explicit shit about men. Like, sometimes it is kind of just, like, a little bit, like, I don't know, like, it's funny, but I don't think it's fair. I don't know, I think it's a double standard. And once we calm down on the, like, super sexual shaming, I just think it will even out.
Child support is given based on the amount of time that children get with...
I mean, it's more than rap culture, though, too. Like, you can see it in TV shows and movies. It's just hyper sexualization of women. Lots of times, like, their entire role is just sex. And yeah, like, honestly, like, I don't like Cardi B. I don't listen to that music, but WAP was, like, kind of, like, legendary. I'm not gonna lie. Like, and literally, I don't listen to any of this music. I think it's all trash. But the fact that she had, like, the gall to, like, make a song like that as a woman, like, yeah, I don't know. I, like, more power to her. Like, I do think it's kind of awesome. But I don't support the culture at the same time. But, like, it does feel good kind of hearing all this super, like, degrading kind of shit about women your entire life since a little girl, and then finally, like, some two women, like, make a crazy ass song like that. But ideally, I don't like when it gets to the masses' heads and then women are using sex as power against men and stuff. But ultimately, it's not powerful using sex against men as power. Like, oh, wow, we got them. We're giving them what they want, like, for free. Yeah, we got them. Like, no, that's not what feminism is. Feminism's whole point was to take women out of that just sex, role and you know, be seen as just like more than just like a virgin for our husbands or just, you know, whatever. So it is kind of like anti-feminism in my mind too, but again, like I see the point, and that's what I'm saying. It's like a reaction. And I think women are starting to wake up and realize, like, you know, it's not healthy, it's not good to be using that as like a power trip or some kind of like, you know, do you get what I'm trying to say? So I think we are starting to like wake up out of that a little bit, and hopefully I think it will even out, and I think it is starting to even out. And I don't think most women are acting like that anyways. There's the percentages of like women on OnlyFans and sex workers are still very low. So
get with that dads are given with the children, and that women have incentive to not give men access to their children and are rewarded for doing so. Many men in this process find themselves homeless because they cannot keep up with child support payments. The loss of a child is one of the leading indicators of mental illness. Many men that I have interviewed have compared this to death. Losing a child they would rather die than live a life without their children. And the stats show that many men pick death over this reality. Another thing that most do not know is that family court is not based on evidence. It's based on a balance of probabilities rather than beyond a reasonable doubt.
That is such a stupid fucking statement. Family court isn't based on evidence. It's based on a balance of probabilities. What do you think the balance of probabilities is fucking based on? Evidence. What she's saying is it's a civil case. Family court is civil, not criminal. That's what she's... Oh my gosh, she's so dumb.
This means it is easier for a man...
And yeah, they should tell women what to fully expect with the OnlyFans. I would be fine with I would love to raise the age of OnlyFans porn from 18 to 21, but this is my problem. Nobody ever talked about raising the age of women entering porn to 21 until OnlyFans, until women were starting to work for themselves, which is, you know, I would argue OnlyFans is 100% more preferable than actual porn. But nobody cared about this. Nobody cared about raising ages or warning women about, you know, what they were getting into. And I guess it's like because it's more popular now, but nobody cared about 18-year-old girls going into porn until they were starting to work for themselves on OnlyFans, which is concerning to me. And like I would love if we could raise the ages from 18 to 21 before you can do porn work. That, like, any type of porn, OnlyFans, whatever. That would be my ideal world.
To allege that a man abused you in family court without evidence. Mainstream cases like Amber Heard and Johnny Depp show just how easy it is for women to ruin a man's reputation with no evidence. Many times the women are actually given free resources from domestic abuse centers in order to assist women in this. In many areas, the courts have alleged that the definition of abuse has changed in the last 50 years to include things like emotional abuse, financial abuse, and have also changed the definition of rape from forced sex to sex without consent. The problem you get when you change these definitions to be more broad is that women are allowed to say things like yelling is abuse and he did not let me spend $5,000 on my credit card, therefore he is abusive. I have seen cases where men were accused of raping.
That fucking never happens. What she just said never fucking happens. That... major eye roll. Major
woman
fucking
the first time they hooked up, and they were married 10 years after. Women weaponize this against them men. The problem you get with these definitions that are more broad.
The part where, oh, he didn't let me spend $5,000 on my credit card. He's abusive.
Women are allowed to abuse the system. As I said before, losing a child is like death to a lot of men. One area that we studied was veteran suicide. 44 veterans a day commit suicide, and over 400,000 men have died due to suicide in the last 25 years. To put it into perspective, since the Revolutionary War, 650,000 have died in battle. In 25 years, we have hit 2/3 of that. Terrence Popp has worked with veterans for 15 years, and through our personal research have found that 70% of veteran suicides have come in contact with family court in the last 5 years. Family court is literally killing men every day, and nobody is talking about it. On top of that, fathers have to watch their mothers raise children in a way that sets up their children for failure. Single mother homes account for 63% of youth suicides, 90% of the homeless and runaways, and the majority of school shooters, where single father homes fare similar to two parents homes. I personally have interviewed men who had to watch a mother try to transition their kid, and I had one case where a mother's new boyfriend had accusations of being a pedophile, and there was nothing the man could do. Let's go over this again. The upside is that men get a woman who has slept with at least 4 other men and maybe 2 children out of the deal.
Sorry, this is like kind of a funny remark, but now Pearl doesn't care about accusations. If a man makes an accusation, you know, it's okay. But any other time you talk about an accusation, it's like, it's complete bullshit. It's totally invalid. But I do think that's a fucked up situation if that's true. But I just want to point out the double standards again. On average, the woman will be 170 pounds and 5'3". Odds are she at least likely has 1 tattoo, some debt, and maybe even a previous child in tow. The downside is you can lose half your assets, your children, your reputation, homelessness, and you can be put on child support, alimony, and even thrown in jail. Personally, I would never sign a business deal that encourages that kind of risk. But for whatever reason, men are encouraged to sign a business deal that does.
Okay. You literally finished with 1 second to spare. You crushed that. Well done.
Thank you.
For someone who's not used to time debates, you did really well. Okay. Trent, whenever you're ready, I'll click the 10-minute mark.
Excuse me. All right. Well, Pearl has the burden of showing that marriage is a bad deal for men, and all I have to do is show that she hasn't made her case. And notice in Pearl's opening statement, she never cites a study of married men in general to see whether they think marriage is a bad deal. So to show that she's wrong, I'm going to point out 3 fallacies that Pearl makes in her arguments. So first, there's the wrong target fallacy. For example, Pearl talks about how marriage is a bad deal because men are sometimes mistreated in child custody cases. That's not unique to marriage. If you cohabit or even just hook up with a woman, you can still father a child and deal with custody issues. However, marriage makes a man the presumed father of the child with natural rights unmarried fathers don't have, even though unmarried fathers can still be liable to pay child support. The children of unmarried men are 10 times more likely to be aborted. And if the child does survive the pregnancy, he's 3 to 6 times more likely to live in poverty. The hazards of unmarried, much less for married men. Another wrong target is women themselves. Pearl says marriage is bad for men because modern women are worse than previous generations of women. But that says nothing about marriage. If modern women are good enough for hookups that can result in children, or cohabiting relationships that superficially feel like marriage, but are far more likely to fail, then modern women are good enough for marriage, which has less harms for men. And Pearl can't use these stats to dunk on women because men are also worse than previous generations. Modern men are just as promiscuous and are even more overweight than modern women. A 2019 Experian study found that men carry more credit, auto, and mortgage debt than women. Millennial and Gen Z men have weaker grip strength and make less money than older men did at their age. Pearl has not shown that women are not good enough for men. Instead, the data shows men and women are both in bad shape compared to previous generations. But there's hope. Marriage is the best way for men and women to mature together and bring out the best in one another. Second, there's the anecdote fallacy. One sad story about a marriage does not show marriage itself is bad, because for every sad story Pearl can bring up, I can statistically bring up 2 to 3 good stories about happy marriages. And there are many stories about sad, sick, lonely men who never marry. Pearl cannot prove her case with anecdotes. She needs actual data that proves married men are worse off than unmarried men, but no such data exists. Even marriage skeptics will only argue at best that marriage doesn't increase happiness. They all agree that men who marry are better off concerning health, wealth, and happiness than men who never marry. If Pearl can't provide peer-reviewed data to prove otherwise, then her case fails. Third, there's the comparison fallacy. Instead of stories involving the risks of marriage, Pearl often at times just points to the risks of marriage itself and says that's a good enough reason to not marry. She says, just as you wouldn't fly on a plane that has a 5% chance of crashing, you shouldn't get married, even if it has similar low odds of divorcing. But if you look at the worst outcomes of one choice while ignoring the worst outcomes.
Yeah, so from the numbers I'm seeing, the highest I see is 2%, and the lowest I see is 0.04% for the world statistic of how many women are on OnlyFans. So I don't know if that's including all sex work, but I don't know. I'd say like it's hard to find, but it's a very small percent.
Of another choice, that's the comparison fallacy. It's like someone who thinks driving is safer than flying because they only read a bunch of stories about plane crashes and never think about car crashes. Of course, flying is far safer than driving, and marriage is less risky than non-marriage. You cannot compare the best outcomes of non-marriage to the worst outcomes of marriage. To be fair, you must compare the typical outcomes in both cases, be it flying versus driving or marriage versus non-marriage. And Pearl exaggerates the harms of marriage and ignores the harms of not marrying. For example, according to the National Center for Family and Marriage Research, the median length of all marriages is not 7 to 8 years, as Pearl often claims. That's the length of marriages that end in divorce, not all marriages. The median length for all marriages is 21 years. And the divorce rate is closer to 35%, not 50%. 50% was a future projection from the 80s that has since been falsified. In fact, we are now seeing the lowest divorce.
And that is exactly what Pearl does. She misreads, misconstrues statistics and misportrays them all the fucking time. She always says 1 in 3 women have had an abortion. 1 in 4 women have an STD. These, again, were 1 in 3 women. The 1 in 3 women had an abortion statistic was a estimate, as Trent just said, about a different stat. She did the same thing with this stat. It was an estimate from the late 90s or early 2000s. And they were saying women ages 18 to 45 within the next however many years will, or it was like by this year, women ages 18 to 45, we estimate 1 in 3 of them will have had an abortion. And it was proven to not be true. And the same with the STDs. And it was about one STD. It was like, or a group of STDs. It was like the very easily curable ones, like chlamydia and maybe gonorrhea or something. There was like 3 of them. And they were saying it was like an even smaller age range. It was like women 15 to 25 or something are estimated to have had an STD. 1 in 4 women ages 15 to 25 are estimated to have an STD. Again, proven not to have turned out to be true. And she just spews these statistics as facts over and over and over again to the point where people believe them.
Divorce rates since 1970, about 14 divorces per 1,000 married women. For weekly churchgoers, the divorce rate is half the average rate. Also, just because 35% of marriages end in divorce, that doesn't mean you have a 1 in 3 chance of absolute misery. Divorce sucks, but people typically survive it intact. In fact, men do better than women after divorce. Men's income increases by 20% on average, while women are twice as likely to fall into poverty after divorce. Alimony is only paid out in less than 10% of divorces. And according to the U.S. Census Bureau, the average child support payment is $441 a month, of which only 60% usually ends up getting paid. Moreover, women do not get child custody 90% of the time, as others claim. 95% of custody cases are mutually agreed upon outside of the courtroom. Women get full custody 40% of the time, men get full custody 20%, and shared custody makes up the remaining 40%. Women usually get full custody because men don't ask for it. In a Massachusetts study of 24,000 divorces, only 8% of men sought custody, and 94% of them got full or partial custody. Finally, a 2006 study in the Journal of Epidemiology and Community Health showed that while divorced men were 27% more likely to die prematurely, 58% of never married men were more likely to die early. Never married men risk growing older and having few or no social connections. Pearl can tell lots of horror stories, apparently, about men going through messy divorces. And my wife, who is a registered nurse, can tell you all kinds of horror stories about men dying alone in the hospital, spending every day by themselves, staring at the same blotch on the ceiling because they had no one to ever come and visit them. Now, some men desire marriage and are unable to find a wife, which is tragic. But rejecting marriage out of fear is like the person who refuses to go to the hospital because he worries about medical errors, but doesn't think about people dying at home from easily treatable illnesses. The comparison fallacy once again. That's probably why 65% of divorced men get remarried. 93% of men say they would marry their spouse again if they could do marriage over. If Pearl is right, as she said in the past, that marriage is a death sentence for men, then why do most men voluntarily go back to death row after they've been released, i.e. divorced? Well, it's because these men correctly identify what Pearl has failed to grasp. Marriage is not bad for men. It's not a bad deal for men. In fact, marriage is typically a good deal for men. It's no wonder God told Adam in the book of Genesis, it's not good for man to be alone, and so he made Eve to remedy this problem. Now, to make it clear, it is a lie that half of all marriages end in divorce. The truth is that most marriages last a lifetime, and 80 to 90% of them identify as happy. A Gallup survey conducted between 2008 and 2020 of 800,000 adults showed that married people rate their well-being 12 to 17 points higher than unmarried people. The General Social Survey from the University of Chicago, a gold standard in sociological research, shows that married men are twice as likely to rate their lives as very happy when compared to non-married men. And the majority of married men, in fact, I'd say 80% of them, identify themselves as happy. Married men also make 10 to 20% more money per hour, and they have more sex than never married men. Pearl says that men face sexless marriages, but the General Social Survey shows that unmarried men are twice as likely to have a sexless life than a married man. Studies also show that even men who end up divorced live longer, are economically better off, and are just as or even happier than never married men. Now, Pearl might say these studies only prove that happier, richer men get married, and unhappy, poor men don't get married. But when you look at the typical married man, he is not a 6'2" rich Chad. Moreover, if a man chooses to marry, then he needs to become marriageable, which involves developing positive traits that both make him desirable to women and improve his own self-esteem at the same time. But I'm not arguing that marriage makes people happy. I'm arguing against Pearl's claim that marriage is a bad deal for men and steals their happiness. That's just not true. In fact, marriage is the best. You can't interrupt when I'm talking.
You get a 5 minute after this. He's got 1 minute.
Oh, sorry.
You're okay.
There will be time. I'm excited for that. Okay. In fact, marriage is the best way for men to not just hang on to happiness, but to increase it. The Harvard study of adult development, which tracked people for 80 years, said good relationships were the #1 predictor of happiness. And it showed that men who married ended up happier and lived 7 to 17 years longer than men who never married. And that's a study for people over 80 years of their life. When I was unmarried, let me actually go through here. Well, yeah, when I was unmarried, I thought that having 2 folding chairs and a TV on the ground were appropriate living room furniture. But when you're married, your wife shows you something better, and she roots for you. A 2013 Harvard study showed that married men are less likely to get cancer, and married men are even more likely to survive cancer, showing that marriage is a good deal for men. So finally, I'd be remiss to point out neither men nor women invented marriage. God invented marriage. He gave it to the human race. Christ raised it to the level of a sacrament. And Pearl would have to give overwhelming data to show that something that God gave us is actually a bad deal for men. And she won't be able to do that because the data doesn't support that. Indeed, for most men, marriage is the primary engine that helps them live a long, healthy, and happy life.
This time. All right. Good job, Trent. You have a 5 minute rebuttal, Pearl, whenever you're ready.
Wait, so how does do I ask him questions during the rebuttal?
No, that'll be after the break. This is basically your time, 5 minutes. He won't be able to interrupt you. You can try to refute the case he just made.
Got it. Okay.
So, and would it help you if you saw the time?
Yeah, sure.
Do you mind putting that there just so?
I didn't know that was there.
Yeah, that's his phone, but whenever you're ready.
Okay. 1 second. One thing I noticed in your
Okay,
arguments
starting.
is that you constantly attribute all of the positive things that happen in marriage. You just automatically attribute them to women. You automatically attribute them to that marriage is the cause. I would disagree with that. I would say it's a bad deal because at the end of the day, women are paid to leave. You never addressed any solutions that you have. What solutions does the church
That's her
have?
fucking-
Women don't want to be married.
That's her fucking slogan. Women are paid to leave. Women are paid to leave. That's all she fucking says. It's so ridiculous. And it's also just like not true, especially anymore. Very little alimony is very rare nowadays. Usually it's there's a whole bunch of different things like types of alimony, and it varies per state, but it's usually, if there's any at all, it's temporary or paying for some type of college tuition or until the woman finds a job. Sometimes men are getting paid alimony now. It's not this whole thing.
Men cannot make women marry that do not want to be married. Women are getting STDs. Women are getting abortions. The majority of women today are not marriageable. They're overweight. They're out of shape. And, saying that marriage is good isn't going to change that, isn't going to make women want to be wives. The next thing that I noticed that you said was that unmarried men are more likely to have a sexless life. Obviously. Obviously. Men that cannot attract women obviously are not, and you never address that men are 9 times more likely to commit suicide after marriage. Even if it's a 5%, 1 out of 50, even if it's a 1 out of 50.
Yeah, exactly, Jerry. And that's why I think women having, being more independent than they were before and stuff, I think it creates healthier relationships because, again, people aren't getting together for superficial reasons. They're not rushing into marriages for optics, again, and just provision and stuff. With people that they actually don't like or aren't compatible with. And I think, I don't know, there's a lot of problems in our culture that I think need to be fixed. And the relationships between men and women are definitely one of them. But rhetoric like Pearl's is not helping at all. It's not helping men. It's not helping women. It's not helping women want to be wives, as she puts it. So, yeah.
Chance or 1 out of 100 chance.
Oh yeah, just one more thing. I think there's a problem sometimes that lots of guys in this manosphere world have, where they see women's pickiness. They see women being picky when it's really just incompatibility or two people just not having chemistry. You could be super nice and have your shit together, and the first date you go on, maybe the first couple dates you go on, it just might not work out because you two just might not clash. And I think a lot of guys take that as women being picky, when I think it's just it's not them not settling. It's just you haven't found your person yet. And if you want to be serious and raise a happy family and have a successful, healthy relationship to raise healthy children in a healthy and successful environment, you need to find somebody that you are compatible with. And I'm sure there are people who are too intolerant to things, right? Nobody's going to be completely perfect. You have to accept some flaws. But if you really love somebody and you want a life with that person, like obviously you're going to accept and eventually like love their flaws too, right? And build that together, because you have flaws as well. But I think a lot of guys get down because there's 5 times more men on these dating apps than there are women, and they see it as pickiness.
Chance that you commit suicide, you know, that's negligent. That's negligence. You know, any car would be recalled if 1% of people died. I just think at the end of the day that I would never sign a deal that one party is paid to leave, and you're not addressing the lack of quality of women that are on the market today. Men cannot make women want to be wives.
Well, yeah, I think to Harry's point, I think a lot of people don't even understand what love is. I think a lot of people see marriage as like, what can they get? What is this person going to give me? What am I getting from this person? Instead of like, who is this person and what do I like about them and what do I see with them? It's like, it's very superficial and materialistic. But I think, again, as I think we are moving out of that life, and I do attribute feminism to a lot of that, honestly. Some of you may disagree, but and when I say independence, I don't mean that like you don't need anybody. I just mean the ability to be independent, to not be financially dependent. I'm not saying you have to live, like, be alone forever. That's not what I mean. Like, you can be independent. You can be an independent person and be married. If for some reason, like, your partner died for some reason or the marriage failed, like, your life wouldn't be completely shattered, or you would be able to go on and support yourself or whatever without needing like aid and shit.
And if women don't want to be wives, basically, it's not gonna happen. The other thing is that, you know, if marriage is such a good deal, why aren't men signing up? Good products, technically, they get off the market quickly. Men naturally, they want to do things that make sense. And the issue that you're gonna get is that, again, the quality of women is lower than ever before. The cost of marriage is higher than ever before. And until that changes, until some of the laws change, it is just not a good deal for men.
You still have 2 minutes and 41 seconds if you'd like to keep going.
No, it's okay.
Okay. So you have a 5-minute rebuttal, Trent, whenever you want to begin.
Sure.
And if you want that, you're welcome. Ready?
All right.
Go for it.
All right. So I want to focus on one very clear fact that refutes Pearl's case, that she has not cited any studies looking at men and seeing what do they think. I mean, if marriage is such a bad deal for men, we don't need Pearl to tell us that. Why don't we just ask men themselves? Ask married men, were you given a bad deal? Were you given a raw deal? You go online, you go to Amazon, you go to all other kinds of places, you can see people write product reviews and saying whether they got a bad deal out of something. And you should probably trust someone who actually tried the product and wrote a review instead of someone writing reviews about a product they've never tried before. And I've already shown the data that married men identify as being more happier than unmarried men. They live longer. They're healthier. So
no, that is very undervalued. Humor is the key to most women's hearts. I'm guessing when I say most, but I think in general, women would choose just general attitude and personality and humor over looks and superficial financials and stuff like that. again, especially when women are working now too and not completely dependent on men's careers and stuff, that stuff's going to be lower valued, and your personality and stuff is going to be a higher value. This is a person you're spending your life with. You're living and sleeping with them every day. Like, you don't want somebody who's just miserable to be around. Like, that's one of my biggest turnoffs, is when guys just like, they're too sensitive and they can't take jokes. Their ego is inflated, and you're kind of walking on eggshells around them, because you're gonna dent their ego if you do something or say something. If you make a joke and they take it seriously, like, that is one of the biggest turnoffs. And I understand some people take things too far and it's like disrespectful, but that's not what I'm talking about.
Marriage is a good deal for them. It certainly isn't a bad deal for them. They get many benefits out of that. And Pearl has not refuted that. All she's been reduced to saying is that marriage is a bad deal for men because apparently women aren't worth marrying, which is just not true. She's pointing out flaws in women, but she gives a pass to men. It's a kind of reverse form of simping, if you will, because men also fall under this. So let's talk about some of the things that she brought up. About the issues of being sexless, saying that 20% of marriages are sexless. That's only if you include senior citizens in the entire framework. As I said, the General Social Survey shows that unmarried men are twice as likely to be sexless as married men. So if you're a guy and if that's something that is important to you in your life, marriage is the covenant through which sex makes the most sense, you have the most access to it, and it's the safest and best thing for you and for the children that will proceed from your union. She made a big deal about weight. Women are overweight. Women gain 20 pounds in marriage. She's probably referring to the Gordon Larson 2009 study on.
See, I like Trent because he's and you all know I'm not Christian, but he to me exhibits what a Christian person should be, like how he acts and how he talks about other people and stuff. Like, he really exhibits the characteristics of what I would expect from somebody who calls himself a Christian. And I have a lot of respect for him for that, because I think there's a lot of religious people today who, frankly, don't exhibit those traits that are supposed to be the foundation of their beliefs. So, yeah. W. Trent.
On that. But that same study showed that married men gain 30 pounds over the same period. Unmarried cohabiting women gain 18 pounds during that period, and single women gain 15 pounds during that period. Mm-hmm. So all that proves is as we get older, instead of growing up, we tend to grow out. That's just life. And it's nice as you get married to have someone else to grow up and out with you. And mature people recognize that and don't just reject marriage because of a biological fact of reality. Women don't want to be wives. There's no evidence Pearl gave to support that conclusion. At least I can look at anecdotally. Think about it in your own life. How many times have you heard a girl lament that her boyfriend, she'd love to get married, but her boyfriend doesn't want to get married, or he's dragging his feet? How many times have you can't interrupt him until the time is over? How many times have you heard a guy say, "Oh, I really wish I could get married, but my girlfriend's just dragging her feet"? Women are the ones. Women control access. Put it crudely, women control access to sex, and men control access to marriage. That's how it's worked traditionally, and it still works today. Pearl asked if marriage is such a good deal, why aren't men and women signing up for it? Well, that's like asking if exercise is good for you, why don't more people go to the gym? Why is the gym usually empty? It's because marriage is hard. You have to say no to a lot of things as a man if you choose to get married. You have to say no to things your little lizard brain tells you are good, like trying to hook up with as many women as possible. So people probably don't sign up for it because they don't realize the benefits, and they listen to the lower part of the brain instead of the rational part of the brain that could read studies covering hundreds of thousands of men showing that they're happier, live longer, and have more sustaining, fulfilled lives than being unmarried. So Some of the things that, when Pearl brings up, that divorced men are 9 times more likely to commit suicide, she's probably referring to the Kipoosa 2003 study. It's not that.
I love how he just knows the study. Like, oh my God, sorry. She didn't even name it. And he's just like, oh, she's probably referring to this blah, 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 2003 study. Like, that's crazy.
That's not men are 9 times more likely to commit suicide who are divorced. They're 9 times more divorced men are 9 times more likely to commit suicide than divorced women. But that's only because men are just more likely to complete suicide anyways than women. They tend to choose more violent means to do it.
Is this too fast if I put on 1.25? Let me know if it's too fast. I'll slow it back down.
So, but when you look at the data, never married men are still just as, if not more likely to commit suicide than divorced men. So that's the comparison fallacy once again. You talk about all the risks related to marriage, and there are risks, but there are greater risks to being not married. So that shows marriage is not a bad deal. And as I said before, if marriage is such a bad deal for men, if it's so bad, why do 93% of men say they're willing to remarry their wives again if they had the chance? Why do 65% of divorced men choose and go and get remarried? It's because they recognize maybe someone wasn't right for them, but marriage was still right for them.
All right. So we're going to take a quick break, and then when we come back, we're going to have cross-examination, and Pearl, you'll have 20 minutes to drill.
Gonna get to the fun part. Also, actually, I'm gonna slow it back down for the questions so we can take it all in.
Something.
Okay, 1 second. Okay.
No worries. Take your time.
Do you think that women should be obedient to their husbands?
Yeah, I think that they should be obedient to their husbands when their husbands give them a rational request or directive. But I think that husbands and wives should lead each other to Christ and to the goodness of their family.
So what do you define as rational?
In accord with reason. So something that doesn't go
Not
against
you,
what
Pearl.
reason would dictate.
Can I have an example?
Of
So
something.
like I'm assuming crimes. Like,
of something that's rational or irrational.
yeah, irrational.
Yeah, if a husband says
Like
that-
obviously no crimes, right?
yeah, or if a husband says, I want you to lose a massive amount of weight, for example, that would put if your husband wants you to do something to change your body that would put your health at risk, I would say that's irrational.
Okay, but a normal amount of weight would be fine.
I would
right?
say I would say I think it's fine for husbands and wives to want each other to be healthy, but it's very quickly that if a husband or a wife asks for a person to be of a certain weight, that can easily be more of out of a desire for vanity than for the other person's well-being.
But what about health?
What about health? I think it's
Yeah.
fine. I think it's good for husbands and wives to want each other to be healthy.
No, but I'm asking the husband. Why do you always bring it back to the husband? Because I'm asking about the wife. I didn't ask you about the husband.
Because I'm
So
saying
I'm saying for the husband, can he ask that his wife stays a certain weight? Is that rational?
it's rational for him to ask her to be healthy, but staying at a certain weight your entire life, that's not necessarily going to be healthy. Like saying, oh, I want you to always be 120 pounds. Like, hey, I got pregnant. Oh, I'm kind of getting past that now. I don't like that. That would be irrational.
He would not be allowed to do that under your thought.
I think it would be insane if a man said that his wife needs to stay at a certain.
Why? Why? Like, what's wrong with men having standards? What's wrong with that?
Pearl, you do realize that it's absolutely like.
Are you 120 pounds, Pearl? Just wondering.
Literally, there was a joke in The Office where BJ Novak says some supermodels lose weight when they're pregnant. That shows that he's just an insane chauvinistic
To be fair, she's like fucking 7 feet tall, so, but.
person to demand that a wife stay at a certain weight, even though as you get older, you naturally gain weight. And especially when you get pregnant, you gain at least 9 pounds of weight. That would be insane to demand that someone stay at their certain weight.
Women lose it all the time.
I fail to see how any of this is relevant to marriage, by the way.
Well, what I'm trying to understand is your mindset. So why can't men have standards in marriage? Because if you're saying that men can't have standards in their own marriage, like you're saying it's irrational for a guy to demand his wife stay.
I also feel like it's like how, first of all, it is circumstantial, right? It's like, how old are you? How many pregnancies in a row have you had? But it's like, like I think it's fair to obviously want a healthy partner, right? And I just think healthier marriages are going to lead to healthier results in general. But if somebody is literally on top of your weight and like weighing you to the pound like every day, and you just had a couple kids or whatever, like I think that's a little crazy. Once you start getting into the point where you're obviously like at unhealthy levels and it's gotten out of hand and it's like becoming a habit and stuff, I think it's fine to motivate each other to be healthy and stuff like that. But the way that Pearl is posing this is as if like if you fluctuate past a certain point and you know, you're out of line, or there's like some kind of standard that like therefore men shouldn't get married or something.
Stay a certain weight. Why? Why is that
to
wrong?
stay a certain weight
Why?
during their entire marriage?
Why is that wrong?
Because
I've seen women do it.
Would you like me to answer the question?
Go ahead.
Okay. Because biologically, our bodies change over time. They'll naturally gain and lose weight in different circumstances. And
it's also harder, like, I guess, to work out like the older you get. Like, but I'm talking about like really old, right? Like, but sometimes you just don't have enough time. And again, there's a difference from like a 40 and 50-year-old woman who's in shape versus like a 40 and 50-year-old like supermodel like actress or something who gets like liposuction and shit like that. You know what I mean? Like,
worth as a spouse, whether you are a husband or a wife, is not derived by your weight. That's just a shallow thing. Now, I think that both husbands and wives should encourage the other to should encourage.
It's your job to be attractive.
I think husbands and wives should both maintain attractiveness.
Right, but why do you always have to bring it back? Because
why do you only focus on women?
Right now, because we're asking about the deal for men.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at this from the man's point of view. What does the man get out of it? Is this a good deal? He can't even ask for an in-shape wife.
He gets a woman who
can't even say 120
Can I answer the question?
pounds?
Can I answer the question?
I'm asking.
Yeah, he gets a woman who's promised to stay with him, even though statistically he'll gain 30 or 40 pounds.
And that because
does she have the right?
Women's job has far more of a job to be beautiful than men. You know, men's job is to protect and provide.
So do women
like,
have a right
what is wrong with a man asking that she stays a certain weight?
Because it's shallow. It's fine to ask someone to be healthy, and it's fine to encourage your spouse to maintain attractiveness, not to just let yourself go.
Yeah.
But that's the same for husbands and wives.
And a lot of times when people do start letting themselves go in relationships and marriages, it's because there is no connection there anymore. Like the marriage or the relationship isn't healthy, and people start letting themselves go because they don't care. So that ultimately, if that's happening in the marriage, there's probably a root cause. There's probably other things that happen first on deeper levels.
Neither should just let themselves go. But at the same time, each one should be merciful, knowing that time and age come for all of us.
The reason that the obesity, I've looked that up before, the reason that the men are more overweight than women is because you don't look at visceral fat. So like when men are very high like muscle percentage, they're still considered overweight more so than women. So a more accurate way to look at that is visceral fat. And women have higher rates of visceral fat than men. So actually women are more, and if you look at extreme obesity, women are more obese.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I don't know why you're like kind of lying with that stat, trying to act like men are equally obese. They're not.
Well, men are still overweight, but that still doesn't show none of that shows marriage is a bad deal for men.
Should men marry women that have had abortions?
Should men marry women that have had abortions?
Should men marry women that have had abortions?
I wouldn't say it's a deal breaker.
Should men marry women with STDs?
I wouldn't say. Here,
a quarter of women have herpes. Should men marry them?
I'm going to answer.
Okay, go ahead.
I would like to answer your question. I would say just as it is not a disqualifier for if a man facilitated an abortion, and 90% of, so for every woman who chooses to get an abortion, 90% of the time, the man is actively or passively supporting it. So just as it's not a deal breaker for a woman.
I'm asking for the future man. I'm not saying this, that he asked her to abort his. This is another man's kid. She's had an abortion.
No, what I'm saying is I'm applying an equal standard here. So I would say that it is not a deal breaker for a man to marry a woman who's had an abortion, just like it's not a deal breaker for a woman to marry a man who had facilitated an abortion.
Should men marry women that have slept with over 10 men?
Should they marry someone who's slept with over 10 men? I would say that when you have more sexual partners, that's definitely that's something that's concerning. That could be a red flag.
So you would say
no?
no?
But that doesn't apply. I'm not going to say that someone is unmarriageable because of one particular trait.
What about porn?
Okay. Well,
I think that how we said that is a good point too. I'm not going to say somebody is unmarriageable because of one particular trait, right? Especially if like you can see someone like it again, like it's so circumstantial. It really depends on the person and their circumstances. Also the person who's looking, who's like the decider or whatever, like the partner or whatever, what they're looking for and stuff. But yeah, like nobody is perfect, right? Everybody, it depends. Like your past matters. It does. I'm not gonna say it doesn't. Your past obviously matters, but when we talk about pickiness and stuff, I think a lot of these things can lead men to end up being, I don't want to say like too picky, but like I think a lot of these things that Pearl kind of puts out as disqualifiers could end up disqualifying a lot of like decent women who maybe have an area in their life where they've had a flaw. Maybe they had a mistake at one point and they had an abortion and they were, whatever the circumstances were, and you know she hates that she had to go through that. You know, as I say, nobody wants a fucking abortion, whatever the circumstances were, and it's like maybe she wouldn't do that again. You know what I mean? Like, or maybe she had a period in her life where she slept around for a year or something, and she had a couple hookups, and it's like, oh, you know, I was in a bad place or something, or I was peer pressured or something like that. I don't know, like, you know, whatever. Maybe I grew up in a weird circumstance or something, or like whatever. It's just like, but people can be like in a different place, and it's fine if it's fine if for certain people that's like a total disqualifier. What's the word? A total deal breaker is fine if that's a deal breaker for some people, but when you start like automatically like disqualifying people for these things, like all these super check boxes, like it's going to be very hard to find somebody, especially when you're starting to become like an older guy, right? And now you're looking for a fucking, like, you're in your mid to late 30s or older, and you're looking for a woman who's under 30 years old, doesn't have any children, is a virgin or next to it, has never had an abortion, you know, blah, 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 blah. It's like, that's going to be impossible to find. Like,
what
about
porn?
women that have participated in porn? Should men marry women that have participated in porn?
I would say that that's definitely a red flag, but it is not it's not a deal breaker.
Do you have a son?
Can I answer the questions, Pearl?
like, maybe not impossible, but once you're in that realm, you're going to be limited to then because then on top of that, it's who you're attracted to and who you get along with, right? So you're just like disqualifying a lot of factors. So, again, it depends what kind of lifestyle you live and what kind of community you're in and whatever. There are certain deal breakers for certain people, which I think is fine. But I think just telling guys like who don't even have these ethics themselves necessarily, but they're just saying like, oh, these women are just like trash, throw out women because of this and that, and it's like not even their own beliefs. It's just like what fucking Pearl and the manosphere is telling them that they deserve, you know, better and stuff. It's like I just don't think that's smart, especially for like, I don't know.
Because you can keep asking questions and I'll never answer
because
them.
it just would be easier if I got a yes or no, because you keep giving me these roundabout and I'm just at yes or no.
No, I'm giving you good answers.
Go
okay,
ahead.
so I'd like to finish about pornography.
Go ahead.
I would say it's not a deal breaker if a woman had participated in pornography, much the same way it is not a deal breaker. Well, it's something to be very, very worried about. So I'll answer it this way. It's very hard for me to find anything that's a deal breaker for marriage, except for maybe diagnosed severe mental illness, for example, or addiction to drugs, things like that. But that would apply to men and women. So when it comes to pornography, I would say it's very concerning if you have if a woman had previously engaged in pornography, just like it is very concerning if a woman chooses to marry a man who's previously viewed pornography.
But this is my question. It's like, why can't men have standards?
I will say that his comparison here, I don't think it's comparable. I don't think it's fair to compare women who have been in porn to women who have, or to men who have watched porn. I don't think that's comparable. I think that's two very different things. Maybe in like the Christian world, it's like comparable. I don't think that's fair though, at all.
And this is what I've noticed from the trad community and like the conservatives. It's like the quality of women keeps going down and down and down. And we can't even definitively say, hey, maybe we shouldn't marry porn stars. Maybe we shouldn't marry overweight.
It's also good to remember that romantic love becomes companionship love the older we get. Friendship, in this sense, is the foundation for a lasting relationship. And I totally agree, Harry. And that's why I think the chemistry and compatibility is the most important thing when valuing relationships over superficial things. If you really enjoy someone's company, I think that is the most important thing. Next to, of course, like safety and how, like, if the person's like abusive, like those are like extremities or whatever, or like exceptions. But like in general, if you, and lots of times those relationships and those romantic companionships are very motivating for people to get their shit together, like take their shit to the next level and like really like build, and it's like motivating to really start going somewhere, you know what I mean? And that is something that I think a lot of women do have to wake up to.
Women, you know, it's like we constantly get rid of standards for men.
No, I'm fine with standards as long as
we can't even. No, you're not, because you're not even definitively saying you shouldn't marry a porn star. You would never in a million years tell your son to marry a porn star.
An active, currently working porn star?
Even a previous porn
you
star.
said former.
Even former. You would never. Come on, someone you love.
My pastor was when I went to church as a kid, my pastor was a ex-porn addict, and I believe he was in porn himself. He was very open about this. And again, I've said this before and all the time. Like, I feel like many religious people have some of the worst past. And that's what brought them to religion, is because they've seen shit, they've done shit, and they need repentance, and they want that. Like, they were broken and lost, and then they found God. And so a lot of people have made fucked up choices, some way worse than others, but nobody's perfect. And while I do think your past matters, if I don't know where that person is now also matters.
And this is why
you can keep talking, or you can ask me a question, because I was going to say I do believe in standards, Pearl. I just believe they should be applied equally. So if women have a past in porn and that makes them unmarriageable, fine. Then we should just say any man who's looked at porn, don't marry him either.
The equal
is it okay for men to look at porn?
You can ask that during your cross-examination.
The equal equivalent would be a man that's participated in porn. That would be the equal equivalent if we're really going to go apples to apples here. But what I'm asking is, okay,
and there's lots of men who participate in porn that way.
You know, a quarter of women, up to a third, have an STD. Should men marry them?
Should they marry them?
Yeah.
Just the same reasons would apply if you asked women, should they marry men who have STDs? Because men have lots of STDs. And if it's okay to marry them.
But why is it what about the men? It's like the
because
craziest
men and women
thing.
are equal. Men and women are equal. We should treat them equally.
It's the crazy. I don't think men and women are equal.
Are they equal in value and dignity?
Sorry, just real quick. Trent, you can ask questions in your cross-examination.
Sure.
Pearl.
I'm not coming at this from a religious point of view. What I am saying is that you keep telling men to lower their standards because you were saying wife up these whores. 3% of women, 100 years ago, men got a virgin. They got a virgin, 4+ kids. 3% of women are waiting till marriage nowadays. You're saying wife them up anyway. Doesn't matter the risk. Who cares?
Also, you gotta think people were getting married at like 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. So that could be the reason why people were getting virgins 100 years ago. Just throwing that out there. Also, Pearl admits this. Women have a large incentive to lie about their sexual past. And again, I think this comes back down to the shaming. Of course, women are going to lie about how many sexual partners they've had if they're going to be valued and shamed for it. So why wouldn't women back in the day lie about being a virgin? It's not hard to do.
Do you have a question, Pearl?
So yeah, I'm gonna go back to STDs, not a deal breaker, yes or no?
No, they're not. If they're not a deal breaker for men, they're not a deal breaker for women.
Okay. On top of that, porn, not a deal breaker?
Having been involved in pornography? No, it's not a deal.
But, and again, lots of them probably were because they were probably like fucking 15 and 16 years old when they were getting married.
Breaker, but it's something to be very concerned about. The same as if a man had been behind the camera doing OnlyFans work or working at OnlyFans. But if he's truly repented, then people can really change, and we should give them mercy, whether they're a man or a woman.
People can change, but it doesn't mean they statistically do. And women that have made those decisions, statistically, the grass, statistically, it's not a happy ending for most of them. So that's the other question. Why would you sign it? Would you ever sign a business contract that someone's paid to leave? So me and you are going to do business. And I get a bunch of money and your children if I leave. You would sign that contract.
If you get my children, because maybe we're pairing our YouTube channels together, probably not going to sell off my kids on that. But it's very common in business deals, Pearl, where if you have a high value business partner and you really want them to be a part of the venture, you might include things like a buyout clause or severance pay. That's not that uncommon to ameliorate risks or to encourage them to take part in the project.
Okay, so would you sign the contract or no?
When I sign a contract, you've made it very
where I'm paid to leave.
Where you're paid to leave if you're my business partner. It depends how much and what risk. Why
can't you answer the question?
Because your question is underdefined and it can't be answered. You've asked it in a very vague way, so I can only give a vague answer and reply.
Okay, me and you sign a business deal, and in that business deal, and in that business deal, I get your whole YouTube channel if I leave, and I get your children.
Can't
and you sign
even
it.
fathom it.
Exactly, that's the point. No, you're not.
Happy 1, 2, 3, 4. It's 12:34 again. Catch it every time.
Because you have,
and this is the thing, they act like it's one-off instances, and this is what the academics tend to do. They'll say, here's a study funded by this organization, or here's another study, and they want you to not believe what's in front of your eyes. Men are not signing up for marriage today, and you can say it's that marriage is a great deal for men, but men are naturally logical. They do what makes sense. 100 years ago, men were still men, same software. They married women in 3 months. There's a reason it's gone up to 3 years.
I would sign a contract where if you're undergoing significant risk, and the whole point of things that if a marriage divorces, is that women undertake risks. If they come and then they give up their careers and they stay home and raise children, for example, and they
the
do that
majority of women aren't doing that. The majority of women are not doing that statistically. 3 out of 4 women are working, so it's not the majority.
The point is, if they go and do that and they take part in a marriage, you're undertaking risks when you're involved in marriage. Well, as I stated before, women are twice as likely to end up in poverty after divorce than men.
Yeah, because women are bad with money.
No, what happens is women
have 80% of the world's debt. Women have 80% of the world's debt. Women are not good with money. And many men, that's not true. Women have 80% of the world's debt. And the other thing that they don't take into account is that
in this country, men have more.
And women have 80% of the world's debt. Women are not great with money, and men earn more as well too. And the thing is, you're not addressing the suicide problem. Do you not think that's a problem?
Of course, suicide's a problem. It's more of a problem for men who never marry.
I'm asking in divorce. They're 9 times more likely to commit suicide after a divorce.
They're 9 times more likely than a divorced woman. You're misreading the statistic.
And divorced women.
Family court, if they find with.
Oh my God, there were so many things in this past fucking 2 minutes that she just and she just ignores him. And he's just trying to combat the bullshit over and over and over again. It's just mounting up, and it's just okay, you're wrong about that stat. Yeah, that's not true. Nope, men have more debt. Okay, well, no, you're wrong about this stat too. 9% more likely than divorced women. Like, you're misreading it. And she's like, no. Oh my God, it's so frustrating.
Within 5 years, many men do commit suicide. What do you think? You think it's just made up? You think it's just fake?
No,
all these men,
no,
all
I've
these
actually
men that
read
are
the
saying
studies.
my life is ruined.
Yes,
let him answer it. Go
ahead.
No, because I've actually.
No, but the point is, Jerry, that men have more credit card, auto loan, personal loan debt, every single category except for student loan debt. So, like, I'm just saying, like, they just have more debt.
Actually read the studies,
Okay.
and the problem
And I would say student loan debt is good debt.
is you're doing the comparison fallacy here. You're just picking, hey, if you get married, this bad thing can happen to you, or this bad thing can happen to you, and that's true. But if you choose to not get married, you can also have many bad things happen to you. You can grow up and have no social connections. You become a recluse, and you're more likely to commit suicide. You're more likely just to not take care of yourself. And the statistics show that on average, ever married men, including divorced men, live longer, are healthier, and rate their lives as happier than never married men. It's a statistical fact.
Because women date happy men.
So they-
women pick for these things.
How do you know that?
Because I'm a woman. I'm a woman. I know what we pick for. We like tall, handsome, good-looking men.
Is every married man tall, handsome, and good-looking?
Not every, but he's usually one of those things. He's usually one. Like he's usually either successful or handsome or good. Women don't marry homeless men off the street.
There's a big difference between tall, handsome, and successful, and
I'm saying
homeless. There's also average.
No, and so my point is, women tend to pick above average men. We see this on dating apps. Women swipe right 5% of the time. The number one way people are meeting under 30.
Oh, it's not the worst debt, though. Literally, all signs, all statistics show that people with degrees make far much more money than people without degrees. Like, you're going to be even if you don't even go into the field that you got your degree in, just having that degree for a different job, you can get a higher position, a starter position. You get paid more for that position. Like, you are far better off with a college degree than without a college degree. There are so many studies on this. Like statistically, you are just way better off with a college degree. And you can pay it off.
Because that's
apps.
because on dating apps,
but
3
you don't know what
times
you're talking about. You're not even out dating. Like, that's
I do. Because on
on
dating apps, Pearl, the reason that women are so choosy is because there are 3 to 4 times as many men on dating apps than women. So men will be constantly swiping right. Women can be more choosy in that environment because there's just so many more men. But in real life, when you look at a 1993 study, another one by Taylor and another one by Taylor done in 2011. I would like to finish. Before Taylor and Taylor study in 2011 shows that men and women, when they get married, they tend to be within the same social range and attractiveness. So while for dating and hookups, you're correct, women on social media apps, because there's so many men to pick from, go for the higher quality men. When it comes for marriage, people tend to marry within their own social and attractiveness value bracket.
Right, but that doesn't disprove what I'm saying.
Well, I categorize good debt as debt that you can use for your benefit. So when we talk about college debt, that debt is for a reason, to make more money in the long run. So I categorize that as good debt.
Saying women pick a small percentage of men
No,
when given the choice.
Not
Yes.
Versus like credit card debt. And I don't like maybe like some personal loan debt, maybe you can use to your advantage, probably like business loan debt. Like, that's probably a good debt, right?
True, because I'm talking about marriage.
We're
We're talking about marriage, not Tinder.
But that's the number one way people are meeting under 30. And that's the thing, like a lot of you guys are so out of touch. You don't see, like, these studies take years to come out at some time. I can tell you firsthand what's going on because I actually talk to the people.
No, I agree. It's dumb to try to meet your spouse on Tinder.
Right, but that's what's happening. Right. That's where the world is going.
Right.
And you're encouraging men to clean up women's mess. And I say men shouldn't have to do that. Men shouldn't have to sign a contract where women are paid to leave. I think it's so simple. If people are paid to do the wrong thing, why wouldn't they do it? Why would, I'm not saying every woman will, but every woman can.
What woman is going to want to say, gee, you know what would be great?
Don't ask questions. Let her go.
Yeah. Well, I'll go. Well,
you can answer it.
Yeah,
Don't
I'll
ask
answer it. No, the women aren't saying, gee, it would be so awesome if I married this guy and then got full custody of a kid. So now I'm a single parent and I have to take care of these kids. Good thing he sends me $440 a month to help with that. That doesn't sound like a great deal to me.
$440 over 18 years is over $100K. That's life-changing money. That is.
Sorry, I just need to fucking pause here for a second. I need to play that in normal speed. I need to go back for a second and listen just fully take in what Pearl just said. Pearl, a woman who came from a 1%er family, okay? A fucking millionaire baby is saying this right now. A millionaire baby with no fucking children, by the way, has no experience in motherhood, especially single motherhood, and raising kids in lower to middle income family, let alone poverty.
Paid to leave. I think it's so simple. If people are paid to do the wrong thing, why wouldn't they do it? Why would, I'm not saying every woman will, but every woman can.
What woman is going to want to say, gee, you know what would be great?
Don't ask questions. Let her go.
Yeah. Well, I'll go. Well,
you can answer it, but
yes,
don't
I will
ask her
answer
question.
it. No, the women aren't saying, gee, it would be so awesome if I married this guy and then got full custody of the kids. So now I'm a single parent and I have to take care of these kids. Good thing he sends me $440 a month to help with that. That doesn't sound like a great deal to me.
$440 over 18 years is over $100K. That's life-changing money.
$440 a month over 18 years is $100K for a single parent to raise children on, and that's life-changing money? Dude, she is delusional. She is out of touch. She has no idea what the fuck she's talking about. Oh my god, my blood is boiling. That statement fucking pisses me off, especially coming from fucking millionaire baby bitch. Oh my god. Jesus Christ. She is so delusional. Life-changing money over 100K over 18 years for a single mother raising... That's wild. That shit's wild. Okay, I really had to...
That is life changing, and this
Pearl,
is the thing. This is
try
this
raising
is the thing.
children
This
on
is this
three
is
kids
this
on
is this is the
$440 a month.
And this is the thing. This is the other thing that you don't think of. Oh, this is the other thing. See, I'm not used to. I always have to write it down. You said that men don't fight for custody. This is the problem with men in statistics. This is the problem when people just read studies and they're not actually in the field. You don't know why. You don't know why men aren't fighting.
You're in the field,
because
Pearl. You're in the fucking field on your little show in London interviewing OnlyFans models and fucking influencers. Yeah, you're really in the trenches.
A lot of times, men are in the position they cannot afford to fight for custody, and the lawyers will tell them not to do it because they spend $50,000. You know, I interviewed one guy, $1.5 million in Texas. $1.5 million on a divorce. He still didn't get primary custody. These cases are common. And if you spent a day in family court, if you actually were in the field, you would know.
Okay, so that's an anecdote, and it also doesn't say anything about marriage, because if a man hooks up with a woman or cohabits and she gets pregnant, he can have the same issues. So this is not unique to marriage.
Well, yeah, but marriage puts them at a higher risk because they're on the hook for alimony as well.
Alimony is only paid out in 8% of marriages.
I know, but what does a man get out of marriage that he doesn't get out of a live-in girlfriend? What benefit?
Well, he doesn't. One benefit, he's not a 45-year-old guy saying, "Can I bring my girlfriend to the party?"
Who cares?
One, he's not that. He's a mature, stable person.
Okay.
What does he get out of it? He lives longer. He's healthier.
No. What benefit does he get out of specifically signing that contract? What does he get? Women give children outside of marriage, so that he doesn't get that. The women gain weight after marriage. He doesn't get that. And all of the stats you're saying you're attributing to marriage, I would disagree.
Well,
I would say that women tend to marry happy, successful men.
That is just a correlative theory that you have, and that's not true, because if you just look around at men, and when you do longitudinal studies that control for success, you see that's not the case. One longitudinal study found that after a man gets married and upon the birth of his first child, he works 10 to 20 hours a week more than unmarried men.
Right, because women love spending men's money. Of course he's got to work more. Even car salesmen will tell you the final say is who? The woman, the wife.
It's because now he's grown up, Pearl. He's grown up and he realizes life isn't just about him. He has to take care of other people.
My wife's credit card spending is off the chain. And that's the thing. I am
Men
in the
have
field.
more credit card debt than women.
I am in the field. I am in the field. That's the thing.
What field? What expertise do you have in this?
Because when you actually interview the men that have gone through this, you have a completely different perspective.
Oh, hey, Allie. Welcome. Thank you. Welcome.
And that's the thing, because we just went through COVID. How many studies did they have? And experts that came out and said, COVID, you should take the shot. Oh, sorry, I don't want to YouTube you, but
You have 1 minute left.
But my entire point is you can make a study that says anything, but if you look at reality,
So studies are wrong except for the ones you cite for your positions.
If you look at reality, you would never sign a contract that someone is paid to leave, and there are just not enough wives to go around.
You have 40 seconds left. Feel free to ask him more questions.
No, yeah, Harry, I was agreeing with you.
All right. No problem. All right, we've got 20 minutes. Again, you're asking the questions, you're responding to them.
All right.
We'll try not to talk over each other just for the sake of
right,
those at
here we
home
go.
as best as we're able. Ready, set, go.
Alrighty.
It's kind of fun.
It is fun. You'll get addicted to it
Sorry,
after a while.
I was a little nervous, but it's kind of fun.
Then you get right into it and it's just fun, isn't it?
Yeah.
Alrighty. We brought up something earlier about men. Do you think men and women have equal basic value? Like equal dignity?
What do you mean by dignity?
They have the same intrinsic goodness. Men and women are equal
Of course she doesn't know
in their
what that
basic
is.
value, their goodness as human beings.
I think that, because it depends, right? It depends how, I think that men do more good in society than women. And I'm assuming that's the tweet you're talking about. But
No, I'm asking because earlier I said men and women are equal and you denied that.
It was
And I said I
requested,
agree that
Allie.
men and women are unequal in many ways.
I will say this is one of my favorite Pearl debates because she just gets crushed in it. And I love watching her squirm. So
But surely, for example, do white
She
and
is
black
hard to
people
listen
have
to.
equal
I'm,
dignity?
yeah, sure.
sweating
Do
because
men
my
and
blood
women
is
have
boiling.
equal dignity?
Sure.
Okay, good. That's really good to hear. All right. So you say marriage is a bad deal for men. For a marriage that does so, because a majority of marriages do not end in divorce. For the marriages, at least let's say this: for the marriages that don't end in divorce, are those bad deals for men?
Yeah, minimum wage here is also $7.50 or $7.25, whatever the federal minimum wage is. I'm in PA, and I believe it's $7.25 minimum wage, which is ridiculous.
If the wife gained a significant amount of weight, I would say bad deal. Most men don't want a fat wife, I would say. If the wife cheats, I would say bad deal. Most men don't want a cheating wife. If they're in a sexless marriage, I would say bad deal. Most men want, I think most men, if you said, hey guys, do you want to get married? Your wife isn't going to sleep with you after you have 2 children. They would say, oh, hell no.
What?
Oh, hell no.
Pearl,
So,
what would be the best? Let's say a man says, I would like a long-term sexual relationship with a woman.
Okay.
What would you say is the best relationship kind for him to obtain that?
What do you mean by best?
If you
Well, if you made minimum wage, you wouldn't be paying that much child support anyways. Child support adjusts with how much money you make.
guy says to you, Pearl, I would like a long-term.
I'm not saying it's a perfect system. It's not. It has many flaws, but you can adjust your child support.
Sexual relationship with a woman. What kind of relationship should I pursue? Marriage, cohabitation, dating? Which would be the best strategy?
It depends on the state you're in, because some states have different states have different laws.
Just in general. Would you say?
Well, I don't. There's no general.
No,
There's
fine.
no general answer because it would depend on the state.
Why would it? Because what you're saying is that the
Like,
harm.
for example,
Well, no,
in
let me
some-
finish
okay,
because
okay.
I get to
Yeah,
interrupt
yeah.
now, and that's where it gets fun.
Go ahead.
Because what
Go ahead.
you're saying is, well, it's not. Even though the majority of marriages don't end in divorce, you still say those are a bad deal because women gain weight, even though men gain weight also. But you
Sorry,
have
what
to.
about the men though?
Do men in long-term cohabiting relationships, do those women gain weight?
Not as much, but the difference is it's easier to get out of. So if a woman gains weight, it's much easier to break up with a girlfriend than it is a wife.
Okay.
So you're able to have higher standards.
How much weight can a woman gain in marriage before you consider her unmarriageable?
Depends on the guy. I think it's unfair more than like 20 pounds, 15 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What are you doing, ladies? Get on the treadmill.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, I think it's okay. And I think it's good for women.
But-
I think it is
but
good for
according to-
women
but
if
according
men
to
have
Gordon-
standards
But according
for
to
us.
that Gordon Larson study, cohabiting women gain. What was it?
The studies I've seen, it's less.
Less, but they still.
I've seen around 10. I've seen 10.
That's the study you're citing for 24 pounds gain. They gain 18 pounds in marriage. People, the problem is if you're saying that it's a bad deal for men to be in a relationship where women gain weight, and if women gain weight in all relationships, aren't you really just saying women are a bad deal for men, not marriage?
No, I'm saying that women, the difference is in a long-term relationship, you can say you need to change or I'm going to go. And women tend to act better when men have standards.
Okay. Do you agree that married men rate themselves? Do married men live longer than unmarried men?
Yeah, probably.
Okay, so that's
because I think women tend to pick healthier men.
okay.
I mean, I'm a woman. We want, I mean, why do you think women are throwing themselves at these like NBA player? We want the good genes.
Are most men who get married not NBA players?
No, but you can see when you look at the men that women are throwing themselves at, you can see what women select for.
Okay. So, but
I
you
don't
would
want an
agree though
NBA
that
player.
even if that is correct, even if it's correct,
I don't want a fucking NBA player. No, thank you. Like, I don't think most women want NBA players. I don't think most women who are going after NBA players are going for NBA players because they're healthy either.
correct that women choose men who are happier and healthier. If a man chooses to get married, then that would seem that he is or has made himself to be a happy, healthy individual.
Yeah.
Right?
If
he gets successfully marries.
Can you say the question a
If a
different
man
way?
successfully marries
Okay.
a woman, does that mean he has become a happy and healthy individual?
Not because of the marriage,
No,
but
but
she was probably selected because he was that type of person.
So he's made himself into that kind of a person. He's disciplined himself. He's made himself at least somewhat successful, happy and healthy. Okay, good. So he becomes that.
I wouldn't attribute it to marriage, though.
But
I would attribute it to the I think men are going to do what they're going to do. They're on a mission.
On average, though, does marriage take that away from men, their happiness and their health?
I would say yes. I would say there are more men in unhappy marriages than happy. Out of the original 100 that got married.
Do you have a
so
okay,
if you take the I'm answering the question.
Go ahead, sure.
You want
That's fine.
So the study you're talking about 35%. I've heard that's a bit dishonest. I've heard it's more 50%, 45% of marriages end in divorce. The last one was from 2023. I know it was a little off because of COVID, but I think if you include sexless marriages, women that belittle their husband, that's really common. Women that make fun of their husbands in public.
Then you're taking it away from my main point. So you're claiming that these happy, healthy men who get married, the majority of them, they lose their happiness. Do you have a study that shows that? Because let me finish.
Okay.
I have cited the General Social Survey, Gallup surveys, hundreds of thousands of people who are tracked, Harvard Adult Study, 80 years, that married men rate themselves.
Like, besides Twitter, how many times have you gone out and seen, like, women just belittling and, like, embarrassing their husbands in public? Like, I can't think of it. I'm sure it's happened, but I can see like couples fighting maybe in public, but like I don't see this happening.
Themselves as happier and healthier. And
Right,
the majority of them do.
But you're attributing that to marriage.
I'm not. I'm just saying. What I'm saying is
Yeah.
that even if marriage is negative in some ways, it doesn't take that away from them. You're making the claim that the majority of married men aren't happy,
Okay,
but
so-
you have no study to back that
I'm
up.
saying that you can back it up when you look at 40%. Let's say 40% of marriages end in divorce. Okay, 40%. Now you have 6 left. A quarter of them are sexless. Boom, that's over 50.
That's not true. A quarter are not.
There you go.
Quarter,
Women on average,
Okay.
and then on average, so at least half of the women gain 25
I'm
pounds.
going to ask you another
Boom.
question. I'm going to ask you
Boom.
another question again. So we do surveys,
Okay.
and we ask people if they're happy. And I've cited multiple studies, okay, where hundreds of thousands of married men are asked.
Sorry.
If they are happy,
Okay.
and the majority, 80% to 90%, say yes. Can you cite a study that shows that the majority of men in marriage say they're not happy?
Well, you're saying in marriage. I'm including divorced.
Wait, no,
That's my point. But my original statement was.
and I'm going to interrupt because it's my turn. My original question was, for marriage, since the majority of marriages don't end in divorce, and if divorce is the only bad thing, then marriage is a good deal.
But
setting that aside, you cannot show that marriage.
I think this is a fallacy, Carl. I think there are plenty of feminine women in America. I think there are plenty of perfectly fine feminine, modern women, even conservative ones, if you go to the right areas. I don't know, like, what kind of other woman you would want if you, like, outside of a Western woman, like I just don't understand. Most of those men and women are begging to come to the West. Everybody wants to come to the West. I mean, I won't say everybody, okay? But, like, most people want to come to the West. And, I don't know. You can move to Iraq and India and see how much you enjoy it there, but yeah, you can move to China and see how much you enjoy it.
Married men are
No,
unhappy.
no,
We have
no,
data for that.
but I also added in. I said if a woman gains weight,
Eastern
that's a
Europe
bad deal.
isn't gonna
If a
be
woman
that
cheats,
much
that's a
do the
bad
men
deal.
agree? Do the men
If
say it's not
if
worth
that's-
it? But do the men say it's not worth it to them? And they leave.
You asked what I would classify as a successful marriage. Or you asked that was that I made the premise.
The debate is not whether Pearl thinks marriage is a bad deal.
You said I could make the premise.
I just don't, like, when I hear shit like that, like, when you've been living in the West your entire life and I hear shit like that, it makes me think, like, you want some kind of, like, it's just like, this is your culture. This is what you grew up and were raised in. Your parents raised you in. Like, so what do you want then? You want some, like, weird culturally disobedient woman who sees you as, like, you're her master, basically, and she's like it's not a part of our culture. This is the culture you were raised in. So it just confuses me when men say weird things like that, like.
Yeah, but
So I said a good deal is classified as a woman that stays in shape, F's her husband, and stays married and is obedient.
Okay.
So if she's not having sex with her husband and she's gaining weight,
who should determine?
That's 60%. At least half of them are doing that.
Who should we look?
Why would I care about a man who lives in America who is talking about wanting some non-Western woman? Go move to fucking Saudi Arabia and tell me how you like it.
Look to determine the standard of whether marriage is a good. Let me finish. Whether marriage is a good deal. Married men or Pearl Davis?
I think you should look at men and what they're choosing, and they're not choosing marriage. Because if it was a good deal, it would be an easy sell. Good products get sold.
Is exercise
good products?
Is exercise a good deal? Or is exercising a good deal?
Exercising is a good deal, but
Do
I wouldn't.
most people sign up for it?
I wouldn't say those are the same thing. Because again, if women were benefiting men, like they were 100 years ago, if we look at 100 years ago, men signed up for marriage within 3 months. That's all it took.
All right. Here's my
Now
next
it's
question.
taken 3
Here's my
years.
next question. If marriage is so bad, and including people who end in divorce.
I didn't say all marriage is bad.
Okay. If in general marriage.
I said out of 150.
Yeah, because you guys are fucking annoying. It's fucking pathetic and it's annoying and it just sounds like a child, honestly.
If it's more likely, if it's greater than not, that marriage, it will be bad. And if that's the case, why do 65% of divorced men get married again, even though they've already been through a marriage that's failed? If it's so bad, Pearl, why do the majority of men get married again?
Well, I would say, people don't always make logical decisions when it comes to love. But my question would go back to, why aren't men signing up?
And what you're exempling right now is exactly why you're single, buddy. Just saying. Nobody wants, like, a weaselly, complaining little guy like you. Sorry.
In general.
Okay, so anybody who just disagrees with your standard of marriage, they're just being illogical.
No.
Okay.
I said a good deal. I clarified it in the beginning. I said good deal, doesn't gain weight, sleeps with her husband, stays married. I think that's the bare minimum.
Why can't this be a good deal for marriage? If a married man says that he's happy.
Because I don't think that I think happiness studies, like, how do they measure it? They
literally ask the person if they're happy.
Yeah, people lie.
Okay, so it's just a giant conspiracy.
It's not a conspiracy.
Okay, so do you think most men who are married are unhappy?
I think most men that sign up for marriage out of the original, not stay married, that sign up for marriage, 51 are unhappy with that original deal. And we can agree at least 40% divorce, right?
Yeah, there's
So,
a 40%.
okay,
Thank God.
what percent of men rate themselves as happy?
you don't get to,
actually?
you don't get to ask that
Okay,
the questions.
fine.
I get to ask them. And as I said before,
Okay.
just because a marriage ends in divorce, it doesn't mean that person now thinks that marriage is a bad deal, since the majority of men who get divorced choose to go back and get married anyways. I want to go back to some of the different.
Why don't the majority of men
you don't get
sign
to
up for
ask.
marriage?
You don't get to ask. I'm going to go back here.
Because if it was such a good deal, they'd sign up.
Yeah, well,
they would. Good
okay.
products get
Never
sold.
gonna happen, Harry.
You know, you think
Okay.
Elon Musk is running out of his cars
Okay.
when they first came out, anyways. I don't know about now, but
All right.
I heard that truck was bad.
All right.
Oh,
Let's
sorry
see
if you can
here,
hear
'cause
my
you've brought
boyfriend
up-
in the background.
80% of women
All right,
get
you said-
HPV. That's crazy.
Okay. What percent of men get HPV?
Similar, but they're only the sexually active ones, and there's a higher percent of sexually active women.
yeah,
than
let me.
men.
I guess I'll start asking these questions. Do men have
Who
a lot of
loves this
STDs?
American woman right here.
A smaller, not at the. They're at a lower rate than women.
How do you know that?
You can Google it. CDC.
Okay, but still, do the majority of men have STDs who are unmarried, sexually active?
Well, if they're sexually active, but the minority. This is the thing. You guys don't know what's going on because you guys have been out of the game so long. The number one way that people are meeting is dating apps. Women swipe right
if I
5,
get
10,
up
up to
to-
20% of the time. What does that mean?
Okay.
More,
So,
a
as a man-
minority of
To-
men can even sleep around. So when you guys are saying men
10,000
stop sleeping around, a minority of men even get the choice to do
I'll
that.
wear a
Do men cheat?
burqa.
Yeah.
Okay. So if a man cheats and he leaves his wife to be with another woman, is it fair that he should have to compensate her by paying for things like child support now that he's abandoned her?
Is he going to be an active father?
If a
Well,
man,
it's
no,
one thing. So
no, I'm
I'm
gonna ask the
asking.
question
Okay.
again. If a man
I'm clarifying.
if a man is married to a woman, they have 3 kids, and he says, "Wow, I'd like to be married to this other lady instead that I had an affair
Okay.
with," and he abandons his wife and children, and his wife has been raising these kids, and now they're on their own. Isn't it just that he should compensate them for putting them in that position by paying
How old?
child support?
How many kids? How old?
Let's say 3 kids, 3, 6, and 9.
3, 6, and 9. And he completely abandoned them. Not even.
So he tells the wife, "You can have full custody of the kids. I want to go and get remarried." Shouldn't he have to support them since he was an awful person and abandoned them and put them in this position?
You know what? Sorry. No, I don't believe in child support. I don't believe in alimony. I think it's equal. Women have fought. We have fought for
As soon as I
equality.
get my
Wait, we have fought
10,000
for equality. We
subscribers,
got
I'm gonna
it.
wear it,
So
and
now
then
you
I'm
get a
gonna
job
get
like everyone else. It's a
demonetized and
sad
get
situation,
kicked
but
off YouTube.
overwhelmingly, men aren't the ones doing that. Women, there are far more deadbeat moms than
For
deadbeat
doing
dads.
that.
Do you think you simp for men?
No.
I'm married.
So you don't call it simping for men and saying that that if a woman does something bad, she should have to pay consequences for it. But if a man,
if a
no, I'm
woman-
going to finish. If a
okay.
man abandons his family because he wants to screw some other lady and puts them into poverty, you're saying he shouldn't have to spend a dime on that.
Yeah,
Why?
equality, baby, because women abandon
If
the choice to do that.
do men cheat?
Yeah.
Okay. So if a man cheats and he leaves his wife to be with another woman, is it fair that he should have to compensate her by paying for things like child support now that he's abandoned her?
Is he going to be an active father?
If a
Well,
man,
it's
no,
one thing. So
no,
I'm
gonna ask the
asking-
question
okay.
again. If a man,
I'm clarifying.
if a man is married to a woman, they have 3 kids, and he says, "Wow, I'd like to be married to this other lady instead that I had an affair
Okay.
with," and he abandons his wife and children, and his wife has been raising these kids, and now they're on their own. Isn't it just that he should compensate them for putting them in that position by paying
How old?
child support?
How many kids? How old?
Let's say 3 kids, 3, 6, and 9.
3, 6, and 9. And he completely abandoned them. Not even.
So he tells the wife, "You can have full custody of the kids. I want to go and get remarried." Shouldn't he have to support them since he was an awful person and abandoned them and put them in this position?
You know what? Sorry. No, I don't believe in child support. I don't believe in alimony. I think it's equal. Women have fought. We have fought for equality.
Okay.
Wait, we have fought for equality. We got it. So now you get a job like everyone else. It's a sad situation, but overwhelmingly, men aren't the ones doing that. Women, there are far more deadbeat moms than deadbeat dads.
Do you think you simp for men?
No.
So you don't call it simping for men and saying that that if a woman does something bad, she should have to pay consequences for it. But if a man,
if a
no,
woman-
I'm going to finish. If a
okay.
man abandons his family because he wants to screw some other lady and puts them into poverty, you're saying he shouldn't have to spend a dime on that.
Yeah,
Why?
equality, baby, because women abandon their families all the time and they're not punished, they're rewarded. So I say equal rights, equal lefts. You guys fought for equality, here it is.
Then isn't the answer, shouldn't the answer be both, that instead of saying both men and women should be allowed to be awful people, shouldn't we say men and women should both be held to higher standards?
I would say, I don't, it depends what you mean by high.
No, yeah, Jerry, that is sad, and I'm sorry. You know, that must be hard not being able to do those things with your son, but you know, I'm sure he does enjoy the camping and fishing still, but yeah, that sounds very shitty. your situation. That's why I said, like, you know, the child support system, by no means, family court has so many issues to fix. You know what I mean? 100%. But to say like what Pearl said, like getting paid $441 over 18 years is life-changing money. I just think that shit is hilarious.
Higher standards, but what I would say is I don't think we should have child support.
It's not my ex-wife's fault, it's the state. Yeah, and a lot of the times it is that way. And sometimes even the lawyers steer people in bad directions because they're greedy too, right? Lawyers, like, their income, their well-being or whatever comes from other people having problems. So why would they want to fix your problems? They're going to want to create more problems and more tension in these divorces and separations, like, for their own greed.
I don't think we should have alimony. I think it's wrong.
So even if a man he just leaves, his wife has been a stay-at-home mom for 10 years, 3 kids. She has been out of the workplace, going to have a difficult time finding a job. And I know personally women that this has happened.
Hey, I haven't said anything about non-Western world. Yeah. Sorry, I thought you said non-Western women. My issue is with Western men acting like they want to go, they hate it. Like, it's like the worst fucking thing ever. And they want a non-Western woman. That is the shit that just, like, gets under my skin a little bit. Like, I understand there's different cultures and everything. And, like, you know, it's not like all these countries are terrible. They're not. Like, most of them are very civilized and modern and whatever. And some of them, like, it's just like, that's your culture and that's what you love and that's fine. That's, like, fine. But it's just like Western men talking about wanting to cherry pick your non-Western women. That should piss people from non-Western countries off. That's disgusting. Mew, stop it. It's creepy, honestly, in my opinion. I do not like it. So that should piss you off if you're from a non-Western country more than anything.
Happened to, and he leaves and goes,
like, all these American men fetishizing all your women, all these women in these countries.
Sex with someone else. We're not talking about other women being bad. You're saying in that case, the man shouldn't be compelled to provide for the family he abandoned.
Well, I would say for the same case that if women cheat and leave for another husband, they shouldn't have alimony or child support either. I'm saying in both cases we should not have alimony.
Let me
or
ask you
child
another question.
support.
Let's say you have.
I don't
let me ask you this.
I don't believe in paying people to make wrong decisions.
Okay.
I don't believe in that.
All right. So if a woman, let's say you have a stay-at-home dad, successful woman, has been out, she's boss girl.
Can she be a lawyer?
Sure, she's the boss girl lawyer, turns into the She-Hulk when she needs to, whatever.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
And she's making a lot of money, and then she leaves her husband and kids, says, hey, Frank, you can have the kids. I'm going to run off with this other lawyer at the office. And now he and the kids are in poverty. Do you think that she should have to pay child support to them?
Nope. I think he should get a job.
Okay.
And so should she.
So you don't believe, do you believe in marriage at all?
I believe, what kind of marriage? I don't believe in marriage as it is today.
What?
If we tomorrow got rid of child support, got rid of alimony, got rid of all these incentives for bad decisions, fine. Then I would have no problem. But my issue is, one, the quality of women is lower than ever before.
Pearl,
the risk is higher, and women are paid to leave.
What is marriage?
One person.
I don't think divorce and like all this family court and stuff is incentivizing for most people at all. Women and men, but like women specifically, statistically, do far better off in marriages, obviously.
For a lifetime, and the woman submits to her husband and is obedient for a lifetime.
Okay.
But I'm not, and see, I guess my head goes in a couple directions, because the other thing is, today it's nothing. Okay. Today, you said the average marriage is longer than 7 years. Let's say it's 12 years.
The median length is 21 years.
The average, let's say 21. That's still not a lifetime. And a quarter of divorces are gray divorces. So it happens when people are in their 50s and 60s. So that's the other thing about these stats. It doesn't predict who in the future gets divorced. It
It's
says
true.
today. So and it doesn't include people that are separated. I know couples in their 50s and 60s. They've been separated for years. They're still counted as married. So
we have
my issue again is marriage as it is today, and I just think you would never sign a contract that pays somebody to leave. I think it's super logical. If someone's paid to do the wrong thing, they're going to do it. And what are women doing?
Okay.
They're leaving. I'm so shocked.
If marriage is a lifelong union, and let's say a woman does what you say she should do, right? Let's
I don't say women should do anything.
Well, you say women should be obedient to their husbands, right?
If the woman gets married, but
If
some
a woman
women,
gets married,
oh God, some women should be
stay
alone.
home and raise the kids, Pearl? If she
Well, it depends, and I can't give you a straight answer. Like I can't give you a straight answer. It depends. What does he want?
let's say he wants her to
That's-
stay home and raise kids.
Fine, and yeah,
Okay.
sure.
And you think that that's a reasonable thing. So
The
if a
majority of women aren't
if a
though.
woman
That's not the
does- if a-
majority,
but
and
let-
that's the thing that.
No,
like,
let me finish.
go
So if a
ahead.
woman does that, then she takes a significant amount of risk, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, she makes herself. Does she take risk in choosing to become financially dependent on one person?
Yes, she does, but women aren't choosing that. That's a funny thing. Women are having 1 to 2 children. They're in public school. So let's not act like these women are home, housewifing it up.
Okay.
These kids
What?
are in public school for 8 hours a day.
You're right. Men and women. They aren't choosing
That's
marriage.
crazy, Jerry.
Both of them aren't.
But didn't you say men are in control of marriage? That's what you said earlier.
Yeah. So really,
So
it's
then-
more
so
they're
then-
not choosing to do it. Right.
Exactly. And women aren't choosing because women are not wives today.
Okay.
But it's okay, man.
I'm gonna go.
Man up and marry these whores.
You got 1 minute left.
Okay. Do you think that men are marriageable who've looked at pornography?
Yeah.
How about men who have helped like run the camera at OnlyFans?
What % of men do that, Trent?
No, I'm asking you the
This is
question.
like, come on.
I'm asking you a question.
Who have run the camera? Personally, not for me. Like, run the camera at OnlyFans.
All
not
right, we
for
only
me.
have a few seconds left, so I'm just going to take it back to the main thing, the final main question.
Okay.
Okay. Do just a yes or no. Do the majority, 80% of men who are married,
Okay.
say they are happy? Yes or no?
They say it, but we don't know if they're telling the truth.
All right, we are going to go into a time of Q&A, in which we'll take questions from our local supporters and from super chatters. What do y'all think? Since we have so many questions, would 2 minutes
That's fine.
each be a good idea? Just so, and it can be less than that, but it might be a good idea just to keep it to that. All right. Okay, so here's my first question, and I'll ask you first, Pearl, and then Trent. And you can take up to 2 minutes. It doesn't have to be
leave
long.
me the fuck alone.
Do your best job summarizing his position in a way that sounds convincing. Like, I want to see that you've understood his position, and then I'm going to give you a chance to articulate her position to see if you've understood hers. You go first.
Trent believes that men should just man up and marry these whores.
That was a great steal, man.
I
Paul.
don't,
That's
I
good.
don't know if is that how he'd say it?
No, I mean, he said that they shouldn't disqualify women for having STDs. They shouldn't disqualify
I'm
women
not
for
asking you
having
to argue
abortions.
against him. I'm asking you, can you understand his position and say it? Because it seems to me that if I
Like,
can't
okay, yeah, you can say
articulate
it,
my
sure.
opponent's position, that's a good sign that I haven't understood it. So I'm trying to see, do you
No,
understand what's his
I
position?
understand his position perfectly. He believes there are a bunch of studies that say that men are happier in marriage, and marriage makes men happier and better people.
Okay. How do you feel about
Am I-
that? Is that
and,
shit on
men,
the
and
track?
men should not disqualify for abortions, STDs, and being a whore.
Okay,
I
so
think-
do you want to respond to? Is that a good summary or?
No, of course it's not a
Okay.
good summary.
Well, why don't you sum up her position as best as you can then?
Sure. Pearl thinks marriage is a bad deal because sometimes women gain 15 pounds in the 70 years that they're married, and guys should be able to run for the hills because that's the worst thing in the world.
Is that basically it?
No.
Okay. All right. Question here from Catholic Viking from over on Locals. And Thursday, you want to throw up some super chats on the screen here? I love when he calls me boss man. I feel so important. Catholic Viking, so we'll start with Trent. Trent, is there a point in debating marriage outside the Catholic sacrament? And if so, how do you accomplish that when it can mean whatever that person defines it as? Feels like what is a woman type of question, and we need to define marriage as the sacrament. You go first, and then you'll have 2 minutes as well. Go.
Yeah. So marriage is something that God gave the human race. It was created with Adam and Eve, our first parents. So marriage is not a uniquely Catholic thing. That's why when the government tries to change marriage to make so-called same-sex marriage, that's wrong because the government can't change what marriage is any more than it can change what friendship or justice is. Marriage is a natural institution. Nearly every society on earth has discovered it for the good of men and women and the children that proceed from their unions. So marriage is a natural institution. The Catholic Church recognizes that if someone in Pacific Islands or in another country, if they enter into a monogamous, ideally lifelong, sexually exclusive union, then we call that marriage and we recognize it. And it's better for societies that have marriage because this is better for the children that proceed from those unions than it is for anything else.
All right.
Can you repeat the question?
I could if I wasn't desperately looking up other
Sorry.
questions while I asked that and have thereby forgotten.
sorry.
No, it's not your fault. So this person's asking whether there's any point even debating marriage outside of the sacrament because, yeah, people define marriage however they want to. So if we're going to be debating marriage, shouldn't we figure out that we both agree on what it is before we debate it? He's like, how do you accomplish it when it can mean whatever person defines it.
Yeah, no, I think that's a problem I come to because people look at it from a religious point of view, and I'm coming from a legal point of view. So
I would also add, just as a non-Catholic and a non-Christian can know what a woman is from reason alone, they can know what marriage is from reason alone.
All right, I'll ask Pearl this question.
Then why, but then why do they keep saying gay marriage? Like that's legal now.
Because people often don't act reasonably, or
You'd
they
say
don't
it's
think
unreasonable.
well.
Okay.
Okay, this question is from Tony. He says, Pearl, do you see a difference between a woman who has no regret for current digressions versus one who has repented?
I think
That is from current
ridiculous,
porn and
but I'm not
unrepentant versus
Catholic.
repentant and regretful. So, in other words, is there a difference between a woman who's screwed up in the past and doesn't regret it, doesn't repent it, and then there are people who've screwed up in the past, we've all made mistakes. And
when it comes for if I phrase the question as if my brother was to like date, like if I was recommending my brother date someone, I don't think it would matter. I think that if you really want what's
But,
best
like,
for a guy, you want him to have high standards for his wife.
Like again, like I obviously am pro gay marriage. I say obviously because of me, but like for somebody like Trent, I don't criticize him for it because he at least follows Christian values like orderly. So he's respectful. I can tell he tries to like, you know, choose love over hate, and he just seems like a good person who wants the best for people. So when he's following all Christian values, like then, you know, I can't fault him for believing in Christian values when he's actually acting like a Christian.
Trent, you want to respond to that?
Yeah, I think that people should choose to marry the best person for them, and choose to marry someone who has a good chance of being in a lifelong union. But not all of us, people make mistakes in their lives. But when it comes, so for example, large majorities of men look at pornography and have sex outside of marriage. That harms their future chances in marriage, but not irreparably. A much tinier percentage of women do things like be on OnlyFans, and that also harms their chances in a future marriage, but not irreparably.
I get a question because it seems like, and this is to you, and I'll get a question. Pearl seemed to be saying, like, you're just out of touch, like you're old, like you don't understand what it's like today. So maybe that was true for you back in the late 90s or the early 2000s, that women were marriageable, they were better. But isn't it possible that you are out of touch and that she's right just today? I mean, why don't you ask young men, and have you asked young men? Maybe they would agree with Pearl.
Sure, and when you look at studies and you look at young men who have gotten married and who stay married, they do say that women are marriageable. What Pearl is doing here is that if you create so high of a standard that no woman can meet it, you've just created
Don't have an abortion?
Hold on, you've created an arbitrary standard,
Jared,
and it's also
exactly.
sexist
I
if you
agree.
don't apply the same standards to men, such as don't marry a man who has actively or passively supported an abortion, which is going to be the same percentage as women involved in abortions. I'm saying to treat men and women equally in this regard, and we do see that there's if what Pearl's doing is the reverse of a radical feminist who says, oh, men are terrible, men are awful, look at all these awful, terrible things that men do, and say there's no good men out there. That's not true. There's plenty of good men out there. You just have an anti-male standard to exclude them, and that's the same for people who try to do the same, to say that marriage is bad because of women.
I don't think it's crazy for men to ask for an in-shape woman that didn't have an abortion, STD, or debt. I don't think that's crazy.
Yeah, that doesn't sound-
no tattoos. I don't think that's crazy.
But I don't think you're saying it's crazy.
And I would say that to make it a deal breaker that you're going to pick any mistake a person makes, what you're doing is the same as a woman who says, it's not crazy for me to say, I want to marry a man who makes six figures and has a six-pack.
No, I would not say those are the same.
No, because
I
you're
would not
saying,
say those are the same.
can a woman say she wants a guy who is in shape and has a good job?
Fine.
Okay, so
That's
then we
no
have
problem.
Yeah, and then I would say that can a man be in shape if he's 15 pounds overweight?
I would say in shape is the BMI scale. So for the most part, and visceral fat, that's what you got to look at.
Okay. Do you think most middle-aged guys are are muscly, or they got a little fat?
I think again we're going back to, what do men get out of marriage? I don't think it's crazy for men to say, I don't want a woman that's had an STD,
Warning.
an abortion, or
Pearl
debt.
simp in
But
the
real
chat.
quick, I don't think you think it's crazy either, right?
So and by
Well,
by that logic, there would not be enough wives to go around.
I would say
in the
that
next generation.
It's unreasonable, because if you applied the same standard and say for women, it's reasonable for women to not want a man who has an STD or has looked at pornography or has been involved in abortion procedures, then there wouldn't be any men later. Both men and women aren't in great shape today. You're trying to make it sound like it's all women's fault. What I'm saying is just people's fault, and we need each other.
Can I ask you a question now? Trent, I thought, brought up a good point earlier when he said, sure, okay, I'm willing to accept that women are in a way worse state today than they may have been 50 years ago, but that's also true of dudes. And so couldn't it just be the case that both men and women, in some respects, may be much worse than they were 50 years ago?
I would say that men are more marriageable than women today. I would say that most men have jobs and most men are not sleeping around like that. I wouldn't say that porn is as detrimental to a marriage as you're saying.
If a man looks at violent pornography, does that is
Women
he still
actually,
is he
women
marriageable?
look at violent pornography more than men.
No, I'm asking the question. Do you
Women
think
like look at 50 Shades of Grey, all that stuff. That's the other thing. Women look at pornography at a much higher rate than people really are willing to.
is it higher than men?
I wouldn't say higher than men, but violent pornography women look at more. I'm positive.
So you don't think men look at violent pornography more?
Not as much as women.
Do you
No,
have a-
not
do you have a
violent.
study to back that up?
Not off the top
Or is that
of
just something Pearl made up?
not off the top of my head. You can look it up.
All right, just so this doesn't go off the rails, I'm going to
But you
start
can
taking
look
some
at 50. You
questions
can look
here.
at 50 Shades of Grey. That was like one of the biggest grossing movies.
All right, so this question's for you. Eleazar Palmer, thank you so much for the super chat. Says, I work with young adults daily at Catholic University. Pearl, can you give one argument that is not anecdotal or subjective as to why marriage is not the move for young
Well
people?
said, Harry.
I would say because not young for women it's beneficial.
And
for
I
women,
agree with
sure,
you
but
too,
for
Sherry.
men, because women
What
are
you
paid to
said.
leave. Simple.
You want to respond?
Well, I don't understand. Well, wasn't the question about men, why men should not get married?
Can
And
you
you're-
scroll back
Well,
up?
no, it says why. You says young people.
Yeah, just stay on until
It
the
said
end.
young people.
All
So
right,
I said for women, it's yeah.
Okay,
Women.
but so here's a follow. This question's also for Trent. Trent, why aren't young people getting married?
Why? That's a sociological question, so there's a lot of different elements to it. One, why aren't they getting married? The marriage rate has been decreasing. One reason I would say is because people fill their heads with anti-marriage propaganda. Like if you tell people over and over again, half of all marriages fail, half of all marriages fail, when that's not true. The majority of marriages last a lifetime. They think
Well, and a lot of people grew up and saw their parents have either failed relationships or unhappy marriages. And I think lots of times watching two people who are miserable, and they're not like actively abusive, they're not like being even fighting in front of the children or having like very crazy fights in front of the children. But when children grow up and they don't see their parents, showing love towards each other, even spending time together, sleeping in separate bedrooms and things like this, complaining about each other, even just like little knocks, like that affects children and their view on relationships. And I know, like, even when I was at a young age, before my parents got divorced, I thought, like, why would I want to get married? It's just a relationship with an expensive breakup. And I was saying this like in middle school, if not younger. So I do think this comes from watching the past generation and their unhealthy marriages where they kind of felt like they were forced to stay together sometimes, and like stick it out, even though it probably would have been better for them to have like a healthy parenting relationship and then live happier lives. Some cases that is better, depending, I guess, like how young the children are and stuff. And then other people just they're just told from other people about how horrible marriage is all the time. And also I just think it's the fact that people don't have to get married at very young ages anymore. People even just look at the fact, like, everything's shifting, right? It's people are moving out of their parents' home at way later ages than they used to be. People are going off and getting like real career jobs and making financially like independent amounts of money way later in life. People are getting married way later in life. People are having babies way later in life. People are dying way later in life. Things are just shifting back a little bit.
that they're not going to make it. So they've imbibed a cultural attitude that's anti-marriage. Also, frankly, so there's a lot of men, I mean, back in the day, well, to put it crudely, no one buys the cow if you can get the milk for free. So, I mean, for men, most of the time, if they wanted to have a sexual encounter with a woman, they married a woman or they paid for a prostitute.
No, yeah. There is a difference, Jerry, and I have seen couples like that are actually very cute, and they just kind of like make jokes at each other. They're just like, oh, like, you're disgusting, or like, oh, you're a slob. It's all like playful and like kind of good fun, and they love each other for it. Actually, I have definitely seen that. But then there's times when it's not playful and they are bickering and making slights and negative remarks about each other, especially in front of the children, and like blaming mom or blaming dad. And I don't think that's a healthy environment at all for children. I think it's probably better to just get divorced and have a healthy co-parenting relationship and not try to, take children or time or money. Hopefully we could be mature adults, which I know is apparently a lot to ask for from people these days. But, I keep knocking my camera.
Now, through the rise of online pornography, other elements like that, you have a lot of men who had a failure to launch. They're not getting jobs. They're not getting discipline. They're looking at porn every day, including violent porn. And so they're not becoming the men the women need them to be for marriage. We also have difficult economic issues right now. People are delaying marriage to get more advanced degrees. Though I will say that if you're college educated, you have one of the lowest risks of divorce.
One thing I think I might be sympathetic to what Pearl is saying is it seems like many men, especially in the conservative kind of Christian movement, we're very comfortable criticizing men. Your failure to launch, you're a slob, get yourself in shape. But we seem less likely.
Oh, no.
Well, and this.
Oh, can you scroll down just a touch? He's saying.
Oh, sorry.
I also,
I wanted to ask you.
Men and women. So I would say that women, for example, men and women both think there's many things I want to pursue in my 20s and 30s before I get married down. And I would encourage both of them. That is not a good strategy. A better strategy is to get vocational, technical, or college education, get stable employment, and get married probably around in your mid-20s.
Are you willing to criticize women today?
Oh, yeah,
women?
a lot.
Okay, I agree with that. That sounds fine. It's people who say get married first and then worry about college and stuff like that. No, I don't know about that. But yeah, once you get situated shortly after you start thinking about marriage, I think that's perfectly fine. Yeah.
A lot of women are overly picky. So they'll, just as what Pearl is saying,
even during late ages of college and your early career, I think that's totally fine to start thinking about marriage. But thinking about marriage like in high school and pre-college, like I just don't think that's like a good recipe for most people. Some people can definitely do it, but for most people, I don't think that's a recipe for success.
Men should have standards.
If they have standards. Women have extremely high standards, saying that men have to get an exorbitantly high income. They look at a relationship like, oh, he needs to have this certain height, or he needs to have. So just as what Pearl is saying, I would say that just as unreasonable for Pearl to say married men have to demand a woman not gain 15 pounds in their marriage, it's unreasonable for women to say I'm not going to marry a guy unless he's 6 foot tall, unless he makes 6 figures,
unless he looks like Thursday.
Rather, what we should look for is the person virtuous? Is the person someone
Isn't being fat gluttony?
Is it being fat gluttony?
Isn't that gluttony?
No, people can be fat without being gluttonous, and they can be gluttonous without being fat. They're not the same thing.
Should I scroll to another question, Thursday? He does. All right. Okay, this person, let's see. Shauna Rencher, thank you so much. Research shows marriage matters to kids with more resources and improved outcomes for kids. Healthy kids become healthy adults. If you want suitable adults, shouldn't you make them in the environment proven to do that? Marriage. Do you want to go?
I don't disagree with that if the laws aren't paying women to leave. And that's the problem. You're going to get the same outcomes we got last generation and the generation before that with every round of people that gets married.
I also hate how she calls it paying women to leave. I understand, again, that there is a lot of misuse of the family courts and child support and stuff, but it's called child support. It's paying for your own children. And yeah, some people are paying way too much child support, and I completely agree. It's not perfect. But we should be, instead of yeeting child support completely, I really think we should be reforming the system. I think there's a lot of systems in this country that need reforming, and family court is definitely one of them. But when she says it's paying women, it's paying for your children to maintain a certain lifestyle that they wouldn't be able to. Like that's its purpose. It's for the children. And whether we can make better ways to monitor how the money's being spent, or better ways to, hash out those percentages and how they are figured out to begin with. It ultimately it is for the children though. Like Jerry said, being able to take your children places and stuff, like that seems like like non-necessary money and stuff, but like those are important things for a family, and they're not like the most important, but like especially if you have somebody who maybe she went to college but she had children, and then she's only been working part-time and she hasn't used her degree. She's not going to have like a lot of job experience in the past couple years or whatever. And so if they get divorced, she's going to have a harder time maintaining the lifestyle for her children that her children are used to prior to the divorce. So that is like what child support is ideally for. It's for the children having a smooth transition in these failed marriages, because it's already hard enough on them. But again, it's not a perfect system at all. It needs a lot of revamping.
And it's just going to be less and less. So you will not have that outcome.
My whole point about that little spiel was like, I just hate how she poses it, like, and how she words it, like getting paid to leave.
Until you switch the laws.
If the laws were changed how you would like them to be changed, do you think marriage would then be a better deal for men?
Yeah.
And the reason alimony isn't granted in most divorces anymore is because women do work now and have college degrees and stuff. Oh.
That's my whole point.
And so what should be changed to make
there
that the
should be
case?
no alimony, no child support, 50-50 custody off the bat.
All right. So if that was changed tomorrow, all of a sudden would you be okay?
Yeah, fine.
Go get men.
Fine.
What do you think about that? If that's the main point?
Yeah, it's just the laws today. It's crazy. People have no idea how disadvantaged men are in the court system. So if that was changed today, yeah, fine.
What I would say is we can always improve things like child custody cases, family court. Just because something can always be improved, it doesn't follow that it's so bad we should have nothing to do with it now. Higher education can certainly be improved, but people who get college degrees tend to be better off than people who don't. So it's still a smart move for people to go and get one. So just because something can be improved doesn't mean it's so bad you shouldn't take part in it now. So for men, if you want to have a sexual relationship with a woman, which children can come from, you're much better off being married than being unmarried, because you still have all of these custody issues, but you come from the weaker position of being unmarried. And if you say, well, I'm just going to stay away from women entirely, you risk growing up to be a never married man, because women are the ones who create most of the social connections for men. Most of my friends are because my wife gets me my friends. That's how wives work a lot of the time. But if you're a never married man, you risk growing to be old, reclusive, unhealthy, and more at risk of suicide.
But again, the women don't want to get married. That I just gave you. If they polled, this is the book of Numbers. So they polled millennial women and Gen Z women.
That's not one. Yeah, the book.
Wait. Listen.
I
It's
read
like
that
wait.
Yeah, I read. Go ahead.
So I'm saying they polled women on this,
read it.
and they did not rate men as high in their priority list. And if we just look, even outside of that, you look in the real world, women have the most choice to get married at 22. We're not picking it.
All right, we got a question here from Nathaniel, who's a local supporter. I'm laughing because I've got a gigantic green bottle and I realize how ridiculous that looks. But he says, for Pearl, how do you consider yourself Catholic when you go against the church's teaching on the sanctity of marriage and the wrongness of adultery? Do you consider yourself Catholic?
Yeah, I'm Catholic.
Do you accept all the things Catholic? Sorry, I'll let you.
Do you think adultery is sinful?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
I don't think that I think it is a bad deal if you are signing a contract that the other party is paid to leave. That's my opinion.
Right. So your opinion isn't that marriage is bad. Your opinion is that given the current law,
deal. It's the current law and the quality of the women are so low that it is a bad deal for men.
And I would say that what is a better deal? Having some extra money and being alone and miserable when you're old years, or possibly having less money but a greater chance of having a family, children, and a fulfilling life?
Well, I wouldn't say those are the two choices, because option C again is men committing suicide. That is, or men being financially wrecked at 45, getting to see. I mean,
sure,
think about. Wait. Let me finish.
Financially well off and suicidal.
And think about that. It's normal for men to see their kids every other weekend. That's normal. Men aren't picking this. They look at the field.
And that's not
true. They look at the field and they say this is too expensive and too hard of a fight.
Does that happen for the majority of marriages?
That happens to a significant enough
to the majority.
That happens to a significant enough amount of marriages that I would say it's too risky. If let's say I had a 2 out of 100 chance of being financially ruined and had my kids.
I think I'm gonna skip over a little bit of this and get to this part where there's like a lot of most replayed. I'm just gonna skip over like 10. There's only 30 minutes left in the video, but it's getting late, so I'm gonna skip over like 15 minutes maybe to watch the last 15. Mew! God, sorry. She's acting out. Okay.
There's no Catholic woman in divorce court. Many women believe one thing when they get married, and then they believe another thing 20 years later.
And I
don't want to address them?
Because I think it doesn't apply to society at large.
Let's see.
Question.
Well, sure, but
do you think
you
if the man,
got 1 minute,
it's really
so
quick.
go.
Do you think if the man wants a prenup that his wife should obey him and sign it?
If he wants to prenup, they're not married yet, so she's not under the marital obedience rule yet.
Okay, but if she wants to be married, should she obey him and sign it?
She should be obedient to things that are within reason, and many prenuptial agreements would be unreasonable.
This question is for Pearl. Pearl, why don't you come at this from a religious perspective? You claim to be Catholic. Just so you know, I'm happy to leave out Catholic questions from now on if you don't want to address them.
Because I think it doesn't apply to society at large. Because I'm talking about what's going on in society, and I'm not trying to attack marriage from a religious point of view. I'm trying to attack the laws. That's my issue.
Then I actually agree. I'm fine talking about this outside of a religious context because marriage is a human institution. It's created by God, but so is justice and other kinds of natural goods. So God created marriage. Human beings God made marriage like he made math, and every culture has discovered it. And so it's up to cultures to refine it and to make it better and to avoid things that make it worse.
Purple Suit Man says, Pearl, aren't you a Catholic? How do you reconcile your faith with your position? Trent and Pearl, should your faith influence your decision to get married?
Yes, I'm Catholic, but I still think the laws are unfavorable to men, and I have seen Catholic
She's not
women ruin men in
Catholic.
divorce court. I've seen Christian women, Jewish
No
women,
way.
Buddhist women. I've seen it across religions, and I don't tend to see much of a difference. There's no Catholic woman in divorce court. Many women believe one thing when they get married, and then they believe another thing 20 years later.
And I would say that that's as I mentioned earlier, excuse me, that's the anecdote fallacy and the comparison fallacy. Just because bad things happen to some people, it doesn't mean that that thing is bad for a majority of people. And the comparison fallacy, just because there's bad things associated with one choice, that doesn't mean that it's a bad deal, because the other choice could be a worse deal. Bad things statistically are more likely to happen to people who cohabit and can have these same things.
Yeah, it's like saying that'd be like saying chemotherapy is a bad deal because you lose your hair, it's painful, you go through a lot of shit, right? Chemotherapy isn't fun. But dying from cancer is also a really bad deal. So
Things happen to them, or men who just ignore women for the rest of their lives and become never married and die prematurely
Like
from
priests?
suicide,
Like priests?
from unhealthy individuals.
Would you consider priests that?
Priests
'Cause
are,
by your logic, they would be
priests-
they would have a terrible life.
Priests
and be-
are at greater risk of having depression and other things like that, so greater care has to be taken with them. But not everybody. But that's why only people who are called to priesthood should pursue it, whereas the majority of men aren't called to that. They're probably called to marriage.
Vinnie Cox says, Pearl, as a woman who I'm reading it from a local supporter. Pearl, as a woman who campaigns for the general disregarding of female prominence, what is to
camera
stop
with my
you
new
from
chair.
taking your own advice and being quiet finally? Where is your husband? Why are you so disagreeable, abrasive, and unpleasant while lamenting the very same traits in other women?
I'm actually quite polite, so.
And to stick up for Pearl here, I think her position is that women should be agreeable to their husbands. They might be disagreeable with people they're not married to.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm actually pretty agreeable in real life.
Sure,
But
have a
it's a
debate, that's fine.
debate, you know.
Yeah.
Rod asks, Trent, if women should be submissive to their husbands, and you agree to this, do you agree that men should be able to discipline their wives?
I don't know what that means. From the outset, when I hear that, that sounds very pejorative, like you're treating your spouse like a child. I think that husbands and wives should treat each other like people, like adult people. And so if you have a disagreement, you can set boundaries, you can communicate, you can discuss. But if you treat your spouse like a child, if you treat your spouse in a similar way you treat a child, you probably have a dysfunctional relationship.
yeah,
Did you want to respond to that or no?
Sorry, could you repeat the question?
The question was, if Trent believes that women should be submissive to their husbands, does he believe that husbands should be able to discipline their wives?
Yeah, I think they should be able
And
to.
what does that look like?
Um,
Well, could you think of an example of discipline that you would say, yeah, that's
I think of the treadmill.
discipline them by running?
You think
Yeah.
you think husbands should be able to compel their wives to exercise on a treadmill, or else what?
I guess there's no way, you know. I don't think they should like hit him or anything like that.
Oh,
But,
that's good.
But I do. But yeah. But I.
Thank you.
No. But I do think men should have some level of authority. So I'd have to think about it. It's a good question. I
Yeah.
have to think about it.
I appreciate the humility in saying you need to think about it. So let's see. Related locals questions from a supporter. Question for Pearl. Where do religious monks and nuns, in case that's an unfamiliar word, fit in this worldview of yours? Are they simply losers who have to leave the world? Or is there... So that's a good question, right? Because if you're right in saying that marriage is a bad deal for men, then are these monks and nuns, or monks, even sacrificing? You know what I mean?
I think they're fine.
All right.
Yeah, I would say that's just not what people intuitively recognize. They recognize that when someone chooses to be celibate, for example, they give up a great good. People just naturally know that. They're not like, oh man, that priest really dodged a bullet. It's like, oh no, he's never going to marry for the rest of his life, not have sexual relations with a woman, and he does that for the benefit of the people of God. And there's other people, if you're not religious, you can do that. But we should recognize that most men are not called to such high levels of sacrifice. They're called to sacrifice for their families and marriage.
Joe Ward asks...
Can I add one thing
Sure.
first? I think it's actually very admirable. I think those seem like hard things to do, so I find it admirable.
Thank you. Joe Ward says, Hi Trent, how should we
Good
approach
job,
the
girl.
subject of headship in our Catholic marriages?
she's a fucking.
Well, I think that
idiot.
it's important to understand that two people in a marriage, they're never going to be just, the complete same person, always having the same goals. I think it is important for one person to have some kind of a leadership position, but it doesn't follow that there's some kind of a king or a tyrant or
I
a
know,
dictator. I think that there's oftentimes two extremes on here, which is the idea that men have no special leadership in marriage, or men have some kind of absolute rule in marriage.
And Pearl has made statements on Twitter about husbands correcting their wives with physicality, like a slap or something. She just, she's not going to say it here on this very well-mannered debate platform, like a respectable debate platform. But again, everything she says is complete bullshit anyways, because she's just saying it for clout and for conspiracy. I literally had to sing the Eminem song. I used to be a huge Eminem fan. Well, I still am, but I was like a fucking stan, like crazy fanatic. Like, but I had to sing Without Me to remember the word conspiracy. I was like, what is that word? Without me? Conspiracy. Yeah. Yeah, she loves, wait, not conspiracy. Fuck, that's the wrong word. Controversy. That's it. Without me. Controversy. Sorry, I'm like, so I have to end soon. We got like the last 10 minutes, but controversy, not conspiracy. She loves the controversy and the clout and just the nonsense, and she will say whatever crazy shit in order to get the attention. And I don't think she believes the majority of it.
And there's a long gradient in between those two positions. So I think that we have to reason through and look at what does the church teach, but also empirically, what kinds of communication styles work best, what kinds of ways of engaging one another work best. I find, honestly, in marriage, to have them be low conflict, women need to feel loved and men need to feel respected. That there's actually a book related to this subject, that when women, if you have a marriage where the woman feels loved and the man feels respected, you have a very high degree of chance that marriage will be successful and positive.
And maybe I could ask you to, how do you think a man should
good way
approach
to
the
put
subject
it.
of headship in their marriage? What does that mean?
I think it's more that
I would say, me being a feminist, I would say the best success of a marriage would be for both parties to feel loved and respected. But like, if you want to just like narrow it down to one adjective for each party, I think how he put it makes sense. Rings true.
women should be obedient to their husbands in all things. So I think you should come into marriage with that baseline respect and understanding.
Do you agree with Trent though, so long as it's rational? Like presumably, if the man
issue-
asked the
the
woman
issue-
to
My
sin,
favorite
you would
part's coming.
disagree.
Yeah, but the issue I get is a lot of people say that things are irrational that are not. I would say, I think sometimes that's weaponized against men to make it, if he gives me the tone I don't like, therefore you're not submitting to God. If you don't communicate with me in the correct way, you're not submitting to God. I see a lot of women weaponize that, but yeah.
Just as husbands should correct their wives if they have a really bad idea that could hurt the marriage, wives have that same role because husbands sometimes get pretty bad ideas that can be harmful.
Yeah, but who determines it?
The person with a rational brain in the marriage.
Yeah, so the men.
So I guess, so what's nice is in this debate, we know which side is the more rational one, right? My side is more rational.
Yeah, but not simps. Respectfully, no offense.
Okay. The only simp here is you, Pearl. You simp for
No,
men.
I think you simp for women.
I think you let men get away with anything because you simp for them and like their attention.
I think you simp for women and you always pander to
No,
them
I respect
every well.
women.
No,
Even you.
I think it's pandering
Even
to
you.
be honest, but go ahead.
Pearl says,
Hold on. Okay, sorry. Last time I'm rewinding. I want to hear that in full speed.
It's that, but yeah.
Yeah, just as husbands should correct their wives if they have a really bad idea that could hurt the marriage, wives have that same role because husbands sometimes get pretty bad ideas that can be harmful.
Yeah, but who determines it?
The person with a rational brain in the marriage.
Yeah, so the men.
So I guess, so what's nice is in this debate, we know which side is the more rational one, right? My side is more rational.
Yeah, but not simps. Respectfully, no offense.
Okay. The only simp here is you, Pearl. You simp for
No,
men.
I think you simp for women.
I think you let men get away with anything because you simp for them and like their attention.
I think you simp for women and you always pander to
No,
them
I
every
respect
well.
women.
No,
Even
I think it's pandering
Even
to
you.
be honest, but go ahead.
Pearl says, Sierra, what do you enjoy most about being
that
a
was
woman?
so good.
I think that
You simp for men.
you get
because
so much opportunity being a
you
woman.
let them get away with anything because you like their attention. Oh my god. So good. So
So
good,
I'd say
Trent.
That's what I enjoy. I think that life is nicer to women than to men.
I think so.
Okay.
And you get to have kids.
That's such
I
a
think that's cool.
silly thing to say.
Okay,
Life
what's
is
that?
What do I like about being?
What do you like about being a man, Trent?
The thing I love about being a man is that when
There's pros and cons to being a man. There's pros and cons to being a woman. Pros and cons to being a boy. Pros and cons to being a girl. Life doesn't pick favorites. Let me tell you that.
I go to sporting events, the line for the bathroom is really, really short.
Oh, that's a good one.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's piece of
That's a
cake.
good
So
one.
easy.
My wife always says it's the one time she's tempted to identify as a man is more at the
I get it.
airport.
I get it.
The bathroom at the airport.
And I love being a father.
All right, last question. Kevin says, if a woman is fat, loses weight, and becomes attractive, is she now marriageable? Does that mean new behavior matters? OF model is now chaste. Oh, OnlyFans model is now chaste and repentant. Plenty of men will be interested. Can I just say, I think I want you to, both of you to clarify, because sometimes this can be really general. Like, you ask the question like, well, what if someone in pornography repents? And I agree with you that it's not a deal breaker, but if it was my brother, I'd be like, you probably shouldn't marry this person. Yeah. Does that make sense?
It's the same as someone who's a drug addict who's clean. Like there's always always chances for relapses. You're going to have varying levels of risk with people you
that
choose to
baggage
marry.
will end up in your
But
marriage.
even women, I would tell women to avoid that. I mean, that's one thing my dad told me, never date an alcoholic. Like, that's just a problem you don't want. I would say the same thing for men. You should never date a
There's
porn
always
star.
going to be a gradient between for example, like there's women who want to marry guys on death row. There's women, that get obsessed with like serial killers. That's a pretty big red flag right there. Probably shouldn't do that. But in between that, we're going to have things that are of varying degrees of levels of risk.
But, okay,
And I don't think men should marry women who are serial killers either.
Okay, but what about, like, because my point is there just aren't enough.
See, and like, yeah, hell yeah. I'd have a conversation with Trent. I'd have a conversation with Pearl. I'll have a conversation with anybody, literally. I'm not somebody who, like, unless they're, like, literally, like, a fucking proven or highly suspected with, like, very good reason, like pedophile or something like that. I was actually going to go on Fresh and Fit. I actually reached out to Chris, the producer or whatever, or this, not the producer. Is he the producer? He might be the producer. I don't know. He might be one of them. Chris, they're like, not staffing, he picks the guests. And I reached out to him, and he had me send pictures of myself, and he asked if I was lesbian, and I told him no, and I sent him a couple selfies, and he said, yeah, I can come on. So we were supposed to go to Florida, but we ended up using our money for our move instead. So I would still like to do that, though. I'd still like to go on the show. I have a whole notebook prepared to bring with me for Myron, and I think I've studied so much of their content. I don't think there's anything they can throw at me that I haven't heard them say before, so I'm gonna try to be like super prepared, and I want it to be epic. I mean, that's what I would hope. But yeah, no, I'll have a conversation with anybody. I'm not somebody who gatekeeps conversations or something. No, I actually like talking with people that I don't agree with. That's why I tend to go on any panel I've been on until recently tends to be conservative panels, because I don't want to go on a panel with a bunch of people who agree with me. Like, no, I want to like hash out issues and like in a mature, respectable way. Yeah, he said no lesbians on the panel. So he asked if I was lesbian, and I was like, no. So, yeah. But yeah, I feel like I was going to say something else. I forgot.
Wives to go around. There just simply are not enough.
And I would say I know too many women who ask me and my wife, where can I find a good guy? I've never met a guy who asks us, where can I find a good woman?
I mean, tell them in their friend zone. That's exactly where. Most women have men in their friend zone they can marry. We choose not to.
And Pearl, I do agree with you that I do agree with you that one reason that women aren't married is that for men and women, some men have very high standards when it comes to weight or superficial things like that. And women have very high standards for superficial things like, does he give me the spark or not? So a lot, the women I know who are in the most successful relationships, they found a guy, he's a little bit shorter than average. He has a good job. He's a loving, nice guy. And they got a great marriage. But I agree with you that looking for the spark and friend zoning people can be bad for women.
All right, let's move into our 5-minute closing statements. So this has been an excellent exchange. I thank you guys both. Pearl, you'll begin with 5 minutes. Trent will close with 5 minutes. Neither of you will interrupt each other. And
Yeah, Myron and Fresh make me want to shower too. It's disgusting.
then we will wrap up. Big thanks to everyone for watching. Thank you, Pearl, for flying all the way from England. Can I say that?
Yeah, you can say that.
I guess I'm not doxing you by saying the
No,
country of
no, no,
England. All right. Whenever you want to begin, I'll click the 5-minute timer.
Give me 1 second. Okay, so out of 100 marriages, 50 objectively, marriage is a bad deal in 2024. Out of 100 marriages, 51 will not work out. And the reason they will not work out is because half.
Trent already proved her. That's not true. That's not the statistics.
A little
she's
less
still
than half
sticking
end in
with them.
divorce.
And she always fucking will.
And the ones that you keep around, enough will be.
It pisses me off when people use misconstrued statistics. She's done this with fertility, fathers or false like parental shit. She spread like this big lie that 30% of 30% of men were raising children who weren't theirs. And it's not true. It's out of all the men who have gone to seek paternity testing because they thought that their child might not be theirs. Out of all of those, 30% of them found out that they were right. They were raising a child that wasn't theirs. And then she goes on fucking Twitter and says 30% of men are raising a kid that's not theirs. It's so irresponsible and just dumb. It's dumb. I don't know if she does it on purpose. I don't think she cares about real statistics. She just wants to keep grifting.
Sexless, enough the women will gain weight, and enough women are not obedient and serve their husbands that the majority of marriages simply will not work out. The average marriage, or the average woman is 170 pounds and 5'3". 1 out of 3 women has had an abortion. 1 out of 3 women has an STD.
Not true.
There are
Not
simply
true.
not enough wives to go around. On top of that, the court system is very unfair to men. There is a reason that 90% of the time women get custody of children. And what Trent will say is that it's because men are not fighting for their children. That is not the case. Men want to fight, but it is simply too expensive for them to do so. Men want to be fathers and have wives, but the problem is that women are not marriageable and the laws are stacked against them. Yeah, that's it.
All right.
Okay.
You sure you don't want to take it?
I'll add one more thing.
Take
I'll add one more thing.
Yeah,
Sorry. The other issue we have is that women are paid to leave. You and I would never sign a contract where you are paid to leave. It would be unreasonable. You would just simply never do it. And I think the issue we have is that
simply never do it.
Men will
Good
come out
argument.
and say marry women that are not marriageable, and it's simply men have too much to lose. There are false abuse allegations that happen. There children are stolen. There's alimony, child support. And unfortunately, we live in a society where women weaponize these laws against men. I would love to see marriage return, but until the laws are changed, it will not happen. And for the time being, marriage is a bad deal for men. I would love to see alimony eliminated, child support eliminated, and 50-50 custody off of the bat.
All right. Thank you, Pearl, and thank you for coming. All right, Trent, whenever you're ready, you have 5 minutes.
All right. All right. Well, let me draw together the threads of this debate. So Pearl's job was to show that marriage is a bad deal for men in general, not to show that some men who marry end up miserable. That's not her job, because every choice in life includes miserable people. There's lots of miserable people who cohabit with a girlfriend. There's lots of miserable people who never marry and are alone for the rest of their lives. Every choice has miserable people.
Are crazy.
Pearl's job was to show that men, on average, it's a bad deal for them. And that always has to be compared to all of the other available choices, lest you commit the comparison fallacy. So Pearl, for example, say it's a bad deal for men because women are 5'3", 170 pounds. Well, the average man, no, you can't talk now. Be obedient, quiet. Okay.
I thought it was in China it was the one child, and then it went to one female child, which is why there were so many like female like I know this girl who she was adopted from China because she was a female and she wasn't allowed to be kept because but I thought there was a one child policy rule, and then there was a one female child policy. Like you could have as many males as you wanted, but only one female. I don't know.
The average man is 5'9" and 200 pounds, so he ain't no winner either. Instead, marriage is that institution for both of them to be able to grow together. The idea that it's not good to marry women because they're paid to leave. Well, when you marry, especially when you marry a woman who stays home and raises your children, the man reaps the benefit of unpaid labor of that woman caring for these children and tending for the household. And in many cases, you can have
Let him go.
Shh, quiet now. Your boyfriend can help train you on that one before marriage. So that you can.
Feel free to. I'll give you some more time.
That's fine. That when it comes to the idea that a woman it's a bad deal to marry.
Okay, so it says, in Chinese society, most parents preferred having sons. So in 1979, when the government created the one-child policy, baby girls were aborted or abandoned. If parents had more than one child, they would be fined. Yeah, so that's probably where she was adopted from.
Someone because you might have to...
And that would make sense. They preferred to have sons. Therefore, they were getting rid of children, or they were getting rid of female children. So then that's going to give you a lot more males, and then obviously lesser females.
Pay a financial penalty if they leave. Well, 2 economists in London have showed that in being married, a man gets $100,000 worth of mental well-being every year from the support that his wife provides him. And so every choice you make has risks and rewards. If your man says, oh, I'm worried about losing my money there, what kind of man will you be if you have a cohabiting relationship that's probably going to fail anyways? Or you're alone and you have all of your money, but you have no one to share it with. You have no children to pass it on to. What good is that? What good is the man who gains the whole world but loses his soul in the process, as our Lord says? So the point is, Pearl had to show that marriage is a bad deal for men. And look, she absolutely did not do that. When we look at men themselves, when we ask men, hundreds of thousands of men, was marriage a bad deal? They say no. They say that they're happy being married. All Pearl could do was accuse them of lying. When 65% of men who get divorced choose to go get married again, Pearl says, oh, well, they just must be crazy. Are millions of men, are they crazy, delusional, insane liars? Or maybe is Pearl just promoting a pessimistic view of marriage because it's one that's very popular on YouTube and on her various media channels?
Amen.
Which one's the more likely option here?
Amen,
So how did we see
Trent.
Pearl argue? She used the anecdote fallacy, which I said before, bad things to some people doesn't mean bad things for the majority of people. She used the comparison fallacy. Look at all of these risks in marriage, but never talks about the greater risks to your health, your livelihood, and your wealth when it comes to never marrying. Look, something really bad can happen when you walk down the street, but something really bad is more likely to happen if you never leave your house and you become a weird recluse. Look, I am not here saying every man needs to get married. My boss, Chris Check, likes to say man was meant to live in the context of a vow. Maybe it's priesthood, maybe it's religious life. Maybe it's a private vow to use your life for the good of others, like Batman. But it's really bad for men to be aimless and float through life chasing worldly pleasures. That's why every society has seen boys become men in marriage, primarily. That's what turns a boy into a man. And look, if you marry after your teens, so marry in your early 20s, finish college or an educational program, you don't cohabit together before marriage, you attend church weekly and pray together and have a support group of friends and family, the odds of you getting divorced are low, maybe as low as 10 or 5% when you do these things. And speaking from a personal note, I can tell you I love being married, even when it's very hard. You're going to fight more than you've ever fought, but you also love more than you've ever loved. And so if you want to learn more on this topic, I would recommend Brad Wilcox's book, Get Married. But I would also say when it comes to being a man, don't forsake marriage because you're afraid. Men were made to cross the oceans in wooden ships. They were meant to fight an invading army and fight until the last man standing. You as a man were made for greatness and taking risks for things that are good for society, men, women, and children. Not sitting around all day watching black and red pill YouTube videos and complaining about women.
Okay, Trent, Pearl, I'm sure you've got a lot more to say, but I want to thank you very much for coming in here, having a civil exchange. It was excellent. All
right, it's late, so I'm going to give my final thoughts and get up on out of here. I think one very important thing when it comes to talking about relationships and marriage and yada yada is, like, at the end he said, you're gonna fight like you've never fought before, but you're gonna fight more than you've ever have, and then you're gonna love more than you ever have. I think something that's important that needs to be, I don't know, like, maybe taught more somehow, and maybe this would come from ultimately seeing, like, children being raised and seeing their parents in healthy, happy relationships that know compromise and understanding and love and all that. I think how two people in a relationship get over conflict is one of the key factors to a healthy relationship. I don't even want to call it fighting, because I don't think fighting is necessary in relationships. And that might sound crazy. There's a difference between fighting and arguing, at least in my mind. I've been in relationships where there have been fights. And I could never imagine that with my current boyfriend. We don't even raise our voice at each other. Have we disagreed? Have we been bothered by something the other person did? Felt a little bit like, hey, like, why'd you do that or something? But like, overall, just like how we handle that and how couples handle those situations, those times when you mess up or you do something to annoy the other person, or you have a disagreement about something, those are the times that I think, like, really make or break a relationship. And I don't want to promote that, like, every relationship has fighting. You can have arguments and disagreements, but I think it's right now, I just feel like we, like, normalize, like, these, like, screaming matches sometimes, and these, like, unhealthy ways of dealing with disagreement and stuff like that. And I think that's something we really need to change. And I just think healthy relationships with two people who are with each other for non-superficial reasons and actually love each other and enjoy each other's company and want the best for each other, support each other is a big thing, right? And also pick up their own slack. Like, they recognize when they need to do more, take on burdens and stuff like that. Both people are doing that. Like, I think that's, like, the most important part of being in a relationship, and we need more of it. And I want to see more people together. I want to see more women respecting men, men respecting women, people coming together and not using each other, just, like, wanting to live together and enjoy life together. We're social creatures, right? We need company. And a bunch of fucking one night stand sex is not gonna cut it for most people. Some people say you don't even have sex until you have, like, sex with somebody you love, like, but that's how I'm gonna end it tonight. Maybe I'll try to find something to do tomorrow. If not, I will later in the week. And thank you all for being here with me this late. Maybe I'll try to start a little bit earlier since we've been super late. Let's see. I heard an old saying, when discussing things that might make either rage, get you on the ground, Indian style, for it is hard to scream and tower over the other from that sitting position. It's funny you say that. When Amber Heard was obviously super abusive to Johnny Depp, and in one audio recording that I listened to every single audio recording. I actually still have more Amber Heard Johnny Depp videos coming out that are pre-recorded and I want to release. Actually, if that's anything you guys would be interested in listening to, if not, we don't have to, but we could listen to some Johnny Depp Amber Heard audio on stream. That shit is like crazy, but I think it teaches really good. It shows in real time how abusive and manipulative people act and how victims respond, which is so rare that we actually get audio from the mouths of two people, like an abuser and a victim, in real time. It's so rare that we get hours of audio from that. So I think it's like really good examples. But one thing that Johnny Depp tried to say to Amber was like, next time that, you know, you start getting heated, Amber, why don't we just sit down? Why don't we just sit down and bring the tension down? And she kind of just like deflected from it. But he was trying everything he could for that relationship. But yeah, maybe we could listen to some Johnny Depp Amber Heard audio on stream. That might be interesting. I've heard it all. It's hours long. We don't have to listen to all of it, but anyways, yes. Be safe, everyone. I'll plan some more streams for next time. And thanks for being here. Like the stream, all that, and have a good night.